And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Armchair Dragoons Digital Convention Part 2. This is the second one. Last summer was the first one, and this is the second one. And welcome to the happy hour, which will kick off the festivities for the weekend. And we've got a whole lot of stuff planned for everybody. So this is, as I call it, the Pajama Con. We don't have to worry about flying in anywhere and traveling. We can just sit in our PJs and our shorts and our hurricane sweaters and enjoy some wargaming. So I'm Mo from Mo's Game Table, and I'm joined by Brant from Armchair Dragoons, and who is putting on the convention. And good evening, Brant. How you doing?
Yeah, so look, we got a convention, but we got important stuff, man. Hockey is back.
Yeah, it is.
Hockey is back, right? It's the Kane sweater.
Well, the funny thing is, hockey's back, but tonight I should technically be at the arena for our games, but our weekend series got canceled because of it was postponed due to players on the team being unfortunately testing positive. So that is it's a bit of a mess. So that's just the way things are going.
Yeah, our guys have a 2-game slate up in Detroit, opening up with the Red Wings.
Yep.
So opening up in Hockey Town.
Nice.
And won 3-0 last night, so that was good. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. I will have a hockey game on in the background while I'm wrangling the convention together. But
way to go.
But yeah, so you're right. It definitely is Pajama Con. I actually did have to change out of the fleece pajama pants for a little while today because I had to run to the grocery store. But otherwise, that's been kind of the uniform for a while now, working from home. So.
Oh yeah, it's PJs and slippers for most people with working from home, which is very casual and it's nice. Of course, people wear the dress shirt or something like that if they got to be on a Zoom call. But
I've got a couple of nice looking quarter zip sweaters that I can just pull on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like up here in the office. I've got those for short notice if I need them. As long as I don't have to stand up on camera, I'm good.
Yeah. If they want you to stand up on camera, they're doing something wrong anyway.
Yeah. Nobody needs to see me dance on camera, and we're fine, right?
And make sure you turn off your mic if you're going to be working from home, because and if you have a clip-on microphone, make sure you turn it off if you go to use the restroom during a Zoom meeting, because I've heard a lot of horror stories with that. So,
oh man,
what a mess!
No. I'm very, very particular about muting microphones, turning off video, locking the computer when you walk away. Like, it's one of those things that look, you were in the military also. Like, it's one of those things that when you walk away from the desk, you lock the computer. You do not walk away and leave stuff. Oh.
Absolutely. You don't want to have anybody getting access to your email, because people or the county or wherever you work in will definitely know something bad about you, and it won't be true.
We used to mess with folks with it in the 2 shop. We would when folks would walk away, I don't remember it right now off the top of my head, but there's the magic key combination that will like rotate the screen 90 degrees on the view. And like, it's one thing to invert it because you can always just sort of flip it around and use the mouse and like be able to turn it back around.
Yeah.
But we turn it 90 degrees and totally screw with people. So yeah, I'm real particular about locking stuff up and when I walk away. And so I'm there. Joe's watching the World War 85 broadcast. I was watching it a little earlier before this. I was watching that. A lot of the events, just so folks know, are available to stream within the Discord itself. We've asked the GMs, even if they're not live streaming out to YouTube or something like this, to at least please turn on the screen share within Discord itself. So, again, look, we're not all in the same hotel somewhere. We're not all in the same convention center where you can just walk around and look over people's shoulders. But the Discord screen sharing will get you pretty darn close to that. So we've asked the GMs whenever possible if they can do that, so you can sort of, metaphorically look over people's shoulders and see what's being played.
Yeah, that's the cool thing with all the technology, and the more these experiments have taken place with these online, conventions, people are getting a lot more better at doing proper etiquette and also using the technology in the best means possible. So that way they can convey that message and they can get that information out, and everybody can enjoy whatever it is that people are playing or doing or talking about or whatever. Just join in and virtually hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I got a new laptop for Christmas because my old one was running, 10 years old or so. The challenge is I need to get an adapter cord from HDMI to DisplayPort to be able to plug in my second monitor. So I'm tabbing between windows here on this screen to kind of see what we're doing, but then it'd be able to follow along the chat on YouTube. And you can see over my shoulder behind me there, I've got the Discord running on the side monitor on the old laptop, just to be able to keep an eye on the convention while things are going.
That's funny because look at Hextax. He's got one monitor. He's got Hockey World at War on the second one, and then this show here on the third one. That's the way to use 3 monitors right there.
I don't know that I can string 3 together. I don't know that I've got enough stuff to string 3 together, but I can at least get 2.
Yeah.
And the thing is the computer that I've got an HDMI out adapter. The monitor only has the old VGA plus DisplayPort. I didn't even think about maybe grab like the TV up here in the office and plug that in with the HDMI. I have like a 32-inch widescreen sitting next to me.
Nice way to use it for Vassal.
Yeah.
But that'll be really good to do, because then you'll have it like that, big giant monitor, and you can just kind of kick back and sit in the easy chair and enjoy things a little bit better.
I'm looking at the monitor stand I got next to me. That 32-inch ain't going to fit on there. I'm going to have to rearrange the desk if I'm going to try and pull that off. It'd take a little bit of work.
So things have already kicked off for this second ACDC. And, there's some events that have been running so far this afternoon. So why don't you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, we've got 2 things that are actually running right now as we speak. The War Game Boot Camp is going on, which is a new thing. So the War Game Boot Camp guys, Carl and Tim, have been doing this stuff out on the West Coast at the conventions out there for quite a while, like in person, where they show folks the basics of a lot of different war games, Paths of Glory or whatever. Like they'll sit down at the table and show you a couple of turns just to understand how they play. Once everything went digital, they sort of recast the War Game Boot Camp slightly to where now they spend a little bit of time showing you how to work Discord, how to work Vassal, how to work Tabletop Simulator, so that you can get your arms around the technology to be able to play the games that the other folks are doing. And they did this for the San Diego dudes back in November, and they're doing it for us now, and they've offered to do it for us again down the line. So we're thrilled to have something like that, because it's not just kind of a cheat sheet that you can post to help people out a little bit. It's an actual in-depth, hands-on, here's how to make this go. And so that's awesome. Yeah. We love that those guys are doing that. And then we've got a World at War 85 game going right now. And then starting concurrent with us, the guys from Ad Astra Games, who I've known Ken for over a decade. This is the first time Ad Astra has done stuff with us here at the Dragoons. They are doing a teaching game tonight of their spaceship dogfighting game, Attack Vector Tactical. Yeah. And so AVT is being taught right now while we're here having our happy hour.
Nice. And I was
we had a couple other things scheduled for today that they didn't make registration. It was a little weird. Like last year when we did this, it was last year. I mean, it was only 6 months ago, but it was last year on the calendar. It feels like 12 years ago.
It does.
But yeah, when we did this last time, like a lot of our Friday events filled up. It was a little weird. And so we didn't have as many events on Friday this time around, and we still lost a couple of them for no registration. And one of the other weird things is some of them were a little earlier in the evening. The 8 o'clock Eastern US time is pretty late for the guys over in England to join us for anything. But we had stuff that was supposed to kick off at like 4 o'clock US Eastern, which would have been about 9 in the evening for those guys. Yeah. So we thought maybe we pick up a couple people from Europe for some events today, and it didn't pan out. That's tough to predict. But yeah, so we've got World of War, we've got the War Game Boot Camp, we got Attack Vector Tactical going on tonight while we're sitting here having a drink. Yeah.
It's just one of those things where timing doesn't work for everybody all the time. And, the summer is a little easier because more people are on vacation, things like that. And now we're actually starting the year back after vacation. So the schedules are not as flexible, I think, for everybody taking that Friday off. But Saturday and Sunday are pretty jam-packed, so that's a good thing. If you missed out on anything today, don't worry about it. There's still tomorrow and Sunday.
Yeah, it's a pretty full load. And I think the final head count of events still on the calendar that didn't get dialed back for lack of registration, 46, I think is what we ended up with.
Okay.
Somewhere north of 40, which I'm kind of thrilled with. I mean, that's a pretty full weekend of gaming. There's a couple of things right now that still don't have anybody in them yet, but we're hoping that after some of the teaching games or some of the war game boot camps that people will jump in some of those. So if you want to jump into a lock and load tactical game, we've got a couple of those still out there. And Stefan, who's GMing that, is the lead developer on the system. The guys from DGS Games still have a couple games of Free Blades that have some seats available. And you'll be interviewing them tomorrow.
Yes.
But so this is DGS Games are a new appearance here. They the guy that used to be the CEO is a friend of mine from military days. He's also a war gamer. He's not with the company now. But I've known the guys from DGS for a while and kept in touch with them. It's a fantasy minis skirmish game, but it's a fantasy minis skirmish game that was designed by guys with a deep background in regular wargaming. I say regular, right?
Yeah.
In tactical, modern combat kind of wargaming.
Sure.
The guy who used to be the CEO, massive ASL gamer. So there's a little more tactics to it and a little less, oh yeah, just throw some fantasy bits in there and go. You got to pay attention to what you're doing, which is cool. One challenge translating them to digital is when you see the stuff on the table, the custom sculpts that they have for their minis, and they are awesome.
They are
really damn good. And
I had some of their minis. I think when I was thinking about it, yesterday or last night, I was thinking about it. I was like, I think I backed one of their Kickstarters several years ago because the miniatures were really cool. Yeah. And I did. I actually have some of their minis.
Yeah, their minis they are awesome. I mean, for my money, they are the best minis out there. And look, I'm not intimately familiar with all the fantasy minis out there. Everybody knows the GW stuff where you've got the warrior elves with the 12-foot tall broadsword kind of crap. These are appropriately scaled and they just look awesome. But they've translated all that stuff into TTS, and so you can actually play some Free Blades with them on TTS. It's a great game, and it's a tough sell for a fantasy skirmish minis game to a hardcore wargaming crowd like we have. But I'm still hoping somebody to take a plunge on some of those Free Blades games. I
think the hard part comes to do with the fact that we're not all in the same location. Now, if you're in a convention hall and you're going through and you're walking by and you're like, oh wow, those miniatures are pretty cool, you're more apt to stay at that table for a couple minutes to check it out. And then you go, wow, this is not like, hey, I got magic missile and I cast fireball. There's tactical elements to this. So there's more to it. And I kind of like fantasy. So maybe, I'll check it out. And in a, virtual environment like this, it's a little harder to get that attention. So hopefully anybody who's curious about it can go check it out. And if you have any questions, just check out the interview tomorrow, which we're going to be doing at 3:00 my time, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's 3 your time, 4 East Coast. 4 East Coast, yeah. I think that's when they're in there. The DGS guys definitely got some cool game stuff to check out. We've still got seats available and some lock and load stuff. There's a bigger 6-player game with the guys from Ad Astra Games on Sunday afternoon where they've got an Axanar scenario. So folks that are familiar with the Star Trek lore know some of the backstory of the Battle of Axanar. They've built out a pretty cool Axanar scenario that they're hoping to get some players for on Sunday. So we've got a couple of things that still have seats available that folks are definitely encouraged to go check out. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And what is your opinion so far of the second convention as far as leading up to it, everything that was leading up to it compared to the first time? Because the first time was like, how do we do this? Yeah. The second time is now we kind of have a good idea how to do it. And we've learned some things and now we know how to correct some things we did wrong last time. And here's some new things we want to incorporate. What are the changes that you've put in place from the first convention to this convention here? So a bunch of those changes, quite frankly, are things that are fairly opaque to the audience. There are a bunch of organizational things we learned last time around on the back end for how to set some things up, how to set up the Discord, how to set up the events, how to copy and paste some events so we're not, repeating the same data entry 4 times. So some of those lessons that we learned last time around have made things a little easier. One of the things that's been very cool, and I don't know how many of them might be tuned in watching the video here.
The guys from San Diego actually pinged me late September, early October. I think you were on the call also, where they dialed us in and said, hey, tell us some about what you learned doing this back in July of last year. And we had a really good information exchange with some thoughts about things we wish we'd done differently and some lessons that they could take from that. And then they reciprocated for us a couple of weeks ago. We were on the line with them. And so there's a couple of good ideas they had that we shamelessly ripped off.
Sure.
The way our Discord is structured, where we've got separate rooms for everybody, not just separate tables for everybody, makes it a lot easier to find just the specific game you need instead of scrolling through a long list of games. So it's little subtle tweaks like that I hope make the experience a little more efficient. Promotionally, it's weird. Like last time when we did this last summer, we didn't get as many people registered, but I feel like we had a little better visibility for it. And I think a lot of that was the novelty of it.
Sure.
Last summer, nobody knew we didn't know what we were doing. Like there's no way anybody knew what we were doing. We were totally winging it. Now that there's been a handful of digital conventions under people's belts, that folks have a little better idea what to expect. And so it's weird. I feel like the promotion leading up to this wasn't quite as strong this time, maybe, but we've doubled our registration numbers. So well, I don't really know how to do that math.
I think it comes down to just like last summer, like you said, it was like no one knew what they were doing. Everyone's like, we're trying to salvage some sort of convention season at this point for just having conventions, just to have that gathering, that the gaming and things like that. And it was a learning experience for everybody. You know, how do we do this and how do we do it successfully? And how is it going to work? And are people going to buy into it? The other part of that was at that point, and I think it was July, people had a couple months now, 3-4 months at that point, of some Zoom etiquette. They had learned some of it. We're almost a year into this now, and people have their Zoom etiquette down pat. So the virtual stuff is not as confusing. Nice mask.
Dessert. My daughter's delivering me dessert. It's you want to come wave and say hi to everybody? My parents shipped us a New Orleans king cake, so my daughter put on the Mardi Gras mask to come deliver.
Fantastic.
Okay. So I've got dessert to go with happy hour here. It's great.
There you go. Outstanding. But the thing is, like I was saying, I think it really comes down to just the first experiments they went well. They didn't all go as smooth, and there were things to learn because it was an experiment. Now the process is known and people are more comfortable with it and it continues to evolve, of course, but more and more people they're buying in, on the concept of playing virtual, being in a virtual convention. The other thing about when you go to a real convention, you got to commit 3 or 4 days, when you take into account travel and everything. And you're off site. You're totally there. You're committed to it, which is the beautiful thing about a convention. You're locked away. You're there. You're committed. You're in.
Absolutely.
So you're getting 3 or 4 full days of action. Here, you're getting a lot of part-time action. You'll go for one event, and then maybe you'll go do some honeydews with your family or something like that. Yep. Go have lunch, and then come back and do something a little later. So it's kind of a little bit different, but it's still the same because you still have these gatherings like we're doing now and stuff, because the social aspect is really huge and an important part, which is why we do this. But the bigger part is having those demos and having that interaction with other people teaching games. And I think it's just working really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's definitely the case. Folks that have known me for a while know that I've got some connections with some of the people over at Gamma, that the guys that run Origins. That's one of the reasons why Origins is a little bit of kind of our anchor convention during the summer, where we do a bunch of the wargaming events. And it comes because I've been connected with Gamma over the years, between being a vendor at Origins and being a journalist there, but doing research projects with them. I've been friends with the former executive directors there, and that's not Brant. So, but Brant happened to be in Columbus, where I got a chance to meet these guys. But the one of the Gamma board members I've gotten to know over the years, and I've actually invited him to come to the convention, even though he's not much of a war gamer, because he's kind of curious about sort of how this whole digital convention thing goes, and has had some interesting thoughts about the differences between digital versus real conventions. And one of the things that he's kind of posited in some of the things he's written is that the game convention, when you go to a game convention, when you go to Columbus for Origins or go to Indianapolis for Gen Con or go to WBC, moving it, so I can't just give you the town. Like, I think it's in Lancaster now. Oh, or when you go to San Diego for SD HistCon.
Yeah.
You're sort of giving yourself permission to go screw off for a weekend, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is to go there and be a gamer and be goofy and screw off and play games all weekend. And that's the reason you're there. And that's tougher to do when you're not physically there. Like that boundary doesn't necessarily exist. But I think as people are getting more comfortable with this style of convention, people are getting a little more used to it and understanding what those limitations are. So I think people are getting a little more cool with it. Just seeing some of the names pop up in the chat. I know there's some folks in there that have been in some virtual conventions, both game conventions and some professional things as well. So guys, if you've got any thoughts on some of that and want to chime in on the chat, just remember Moe's Chiron only gets so big before it covers up the screen. But I know there's a handful of y'all that have done connections over the past summer, the professional wargaming conference. Some of y'all were at SD HistCon. I say at SD HistCon, right? Air quotes there. Some of y'all were playing with us last time around, and that's cool. So what were some of your thoughts and experiences, and what did you like? What did you not like? For me, one of the things that I miss the exhibit hall. I really do. Even when I wasn't buying stuff, which wasn't it was plenty of things going home with me,
who
right?
doesn't buy stuff at a convention?
No. Trust me, plenty of things went home with me at the convention.
Oh, yeah.
But I liked walking through a lot of the exhibit hall where I could take the time and stop and talk to folks and see the demos. And even if it wasn't something that I was necessarily going to jump all over, odds are I know somebody who would. And so that gives me a chance to get a better understanding of what's the breadth and scope of what's out there that you could share with other folks and let people see. One of the things I noticed at Origins probably about 4 years ago or so, you sort of hit peak zombie games there at one point, and then next year there were 2. When there's 37, and the next year there's 2, and it's just at that point you sort of shrugging all right, maybe the zombie craze is over now.
Then it became Vikings for a little while.
It was Vikings for a little while. There was in the aughts. What do we call the first decade of this century? The double O's.
Teens. Oh, this, the dumpster
fire.
Word.
There were a lot of vampire stuff back then. There was a lot of sort of ancient stuff. So a lot of ancient Roman, ancient Greek, sort of generic ancients, right? I know I'm overusing air quotes tonight, but sort of generic ancients, dudes with swords and sandals. There was a lot of that stuff floating around for a while there. And now it's gone, and there's other stuff out there.
But it'll come back in about 5 or 10 years. So the one thing you should know by now is if you buy miniatures or anything like that, because you think this system is cool or whatever, and it's great for 2 to 5 years, maybe even less, don't throw those guys away. Don't give them away. In about 10 years, it'll circle back because it's new again, and people will say, hey, let's revisit, Swords and Sandals Volume 1, and let's change some things up and make it Volume 2 or 2nd edition or whatever. And all the stuff that you had before is going to be applicable. But you bring up a good point. I'd like to see some of that in the chat. If you guys want to give us some feedback, we'd really appreciate it. Give us your feedback, like Brant said, about what your thoughts were on the digital conventions that you have attended or heard about. And it doesn't have to just be war game conventions. It could be anything, because I know there's some other, hobby game conventions and stuff that went out that happened last year. And the feedback I got on those was not very positive. But also, on top of your feedback from your experiences, give us anything, being that this is happy hour, this is kind of like that feedback time. Tell us things that you'd like to see attempted in a digital convention. What do you think we're missing in these conventions? What could we add and what could we do differently? That would be a great way to give us your feedback live right now. We can, discuss it, and we'll give you feedback of our own. Yeah.
And look, folks that did this last summer know that I've got I've already got the survey lined up to go out on Sunday afternoon and, Monday to the attendees. Hey, give us your feedback from this convention. What'd you like? What'd you not like? What could we do better? One of the things that came out of last summer's convention, one of the pieces of feedback was the folks need a little more hand holding to kind of get through some of the technology challenges, because a lot of folks are comfortable sitting down, playing around with the technology. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they wouldn't even try a digital convention, but they just felt like they needed a little bit more scaffolding to help them get there.
Sure.
And so we tried to do that this year. There's the cheat sheet that we've got in the general chat in the Discord that's pinned up there. That's sort of here are the basics of Discord and some of the basics of how the convention's structured. Yeah. We've got the Wargame Bootcamp dudes. We've got a how to use Vassal video from Ardwolf linked in there. So we've got a handful of those tools based on the feedback we got from last summer. And so let us know what you think. We need some of those things.
Absolutely. And what is it? Is there anything we're missing? Something that we may not be doing that you'd like to see done and added, or whatever, done differently. That would be a great help to us, because you have to remember, like Brant was saying, we were, talking with the SD-HIS guys. And then the SD-HIS guys were talking to ACDC guys, it was going back and forth. There's this constant information share back and forth, because the attitude that we all have is we want every convention to succeed, because it's not like this is a moneymaker or anything like that. There's no money really being made. We want everything to succeed because we want us all to have conventions, because let's face it, we're probably not going to see conventions this year. If we possibly do, it won't be till late 21. I'm not expecting conventions personally in person. I think 22 is, that's optimistic. I think it's going to be quite a while till we're in person, because even if you have in-person conventions, what's the attendance going to be? Are people going to want to commit to travel and take the risks of travel and then take the risks of being in a hotel, things like that? You may have a convention, but how many people are going to show because of those reasons?
So funny you should mention that. So there's here in the Carolinas, there's a convention that's been going over 20 years now. It's called MACE, and it's all caps. It originally stood for Mid-Atlantic Convention and Expo, I think, but it's basically it's MACE now. It started in the Triad area of North Carolina, and it's now moved out to Charlotte, and it's in one of the hotels right near the university in Charlotte. And I've known Jeff for over a decade. He's a friend of mine. And in MACE, I was there a couple years ago. MACE this past year in 2020 held a live convention. They had attendance caps. They had very strict room capacity limits. In order to help keep those room capacity limits within reason, he sort of spread the vendors out, so there wasn't like one exhibit hall. He kind of had sort of one vendor in each game hall so that people could still check out the booth while not overloading the game rooms with too many people. There was no walk-up registration at all. Everybody had to be pre-registered, check temperatures at the door, had masks on everybody. Like every single thing the county health people told him he had to do, he did. Mm-hmm. He held a live convention for 150 odd people.
Wow.
And actually kept it up. And they've got Mace West coming up in 2 months or so. I think that one's going to be out in Asheville, if I remember correctly. That's where Mace West is. And they're, again, county health officials, please tell us what we're allowed to do. And we're going to do everything we're allowed to do and nothing we're not.
Sure.
So they've gone live for those. Origins just put out an announcement this week that they are moving off of their June dates. They've got a weekend in October that they are shooting for.
Yeah.
And they are going to shoot for a live in-person convention. Again, attendance limits, capacity limits, masks, social distancing where possible, all of those things. But they're going to shoot for October and see if they can pull it off. Which brings up, I don't know. Do you have a breaking news sound effect on here somewhere we can hit? You have the sound. So because Origins moved off of their June dates and moved to October, the Armchair Dragoons are looking at our next online digital convention. The weekend Origins was originally scheduled to happen. Nice. So we are looking at 18, 19, 20 June. this coming summer for our next digital convention. So that's again, breaking news. Like this has only been discussed with a couple of the GMs here and there and a couple of the Dragoons, but we're looking at another one in June, and we'll see what we can do with that weekend. So,
well, John has a comment. He says, I know everyone loves designer interviews, but basically they should require sock puppets on these because most designers put me to sleep. It's funny you should say that, John, because tomorrow night I got an interview with Bruce Maxwell, designer of NATO. And NATO, I had a phone conversation with Bruce a little while back, and it was it was a shame. I kind of regretted afterwards. I mean, I didn't regret the phone call. I regretted that the phone call wasn't the interview, because we sat on the phone for 2.5 hours. We had a fantastic conversation about NATO. And let me tell you something, if you played NATO before, this is a whole new game. This is not like, hey, we're just going to maybe put in some errata, we're going to adjust some things. Nope. It's a new game. You know, he went in there and redid a lot of stuff, and it was based on the new information that we have now, because hindsight's 2020. We have a lot of declassified information from the Soviet Union, things like that from the 80s. So now you can go back and you can correct things that, you know, there was a lot of assumptions made at that time. So he made a lot of changes to the game, added new mechanics, things like that. So his energy and his enthusiasm for the design, I think, is going to be absolutely worth sitting through the interview for. And of course, just like here, your input is going to be a big help, because if you guys have questions, you can ask the question. It'll go up on the screen, and Bruce will be able to answer it right here live during the interview with you guys. So if you find designer interviews boring, definitely check this one out, because Bruce is a really great interview.
Yeah. And sorry, I had to reply to somebody on something on the Discord. The perils of running the convention while you're being,
Yeah. Well, this is the world we live in now.
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny you bring that up with, having that conversation with Bruce. I was driving back from a soccer tournament one time and called our buddy Cyrano on the phone, because we had some coordination to talk about with one of the events that we were doing that year. And, an hour and a half later, I'm like, man, we should have been recording this phone call.
Exactly.
We had a free episode of the podcast right here.
So Command Tent says, I, for one, appreciate the flexibility of the digital style, especially with young kids. Even if I can't get in on a game, I can pop in and out throughout the day and see new to me games, which is kind of what we were talking about before, where you've got family commitments that you've got to take care of while you're doing a convention. So you can say, hey, you know what, I'm blocking these 2 hours. Tell your wife, say, listen, for 2 hours, if you could mind the kids or whatever, let me do this game here. And then after that, we'll go out to lunch or dinner or whatever. And then you can go do that. And then later on that night, when you put the kids to bed, you can jump back on and play something else.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, talking with the guys from Gamma, about the digital conventions, he's seen some attention span challenges with some of the online conventions that they've had. And we didn't really see that problem last summer at all. There were a couple of technical glitches here and there with some of the streams. We lost the Zoom account in the middle of one of the speakers one time. Just Zoom crapped the bed on us, which was kind of annoying. But we really didn't run into too many attention span issues with the people that we had. And honestly, the best theory that I could come up with on that, we don't charge a lot for people to be playing here, but we do have a little bit of a fee, and it's really it's for the use of the tabletop event software that we use for the registration and scheduling. We charge this at the minimum that we can get away with for the access to the software there, so that I don't go nuts using Google spreadsheets to try and sort the scheduling out. And it's fantastic software. I was talking with some of the guys earlier, some of the GMs earlier. I can't say enough good things about that software. But I almost think I got this weird theory that says that because people are actually spending a couple of bucks to be here, they're sort of invested in being here, and they want to make sure that they're not throwing away those couple of bucks, but sure, it's kind of a sign of the commitment to being here and playing and wanting to be a part of it and getting the most out of it. And so I almost, again, guys, chime in some on the chat. You know, was it something you were going to show up and play a whole bunch of stuff anyway, or does the fact that you got to spend a couple of bucks here actually make a difference into how much time and energy and effort you dedicate into being a part of the show here? I'm just sort of curious what your feedback might be.
I would think that if somebody's going to put some skin in the game and pay a few bucks, that would give them a little more, of an incentive to be involved. But the thing is, some people might say, well, it's digital. Why is it even a charge? Why is there a charge? Well, you have to, take into account the fact that using tabletop events, it's a digital scheduling site. So it's putting all of this together. So you're paying for that convenience. And you're saving yourself a boatload of cash because you're not paying $40, $50, $100, $150, whatever it is for various convention badges, plus travel, plus hotel, plus food and everything else. You can still do the con experience if you want. You can
get food delivered by your daughter.
You can have food delivered by family members or, the Uber Eats or whatever. You can, the best part about the digital conventions, you can sit in your PJs and you don't have to take a shower for 3 days if you don't want, and no one else is going to get offended by it.
Yeah. There you go. That is definitely something to keep in mind. So, I am just sort of curious, kind of what folks think about that. One of the other things that, again, sort of curious with some audience feedback on this a little bit. We have a handful of designers that are here as GMs for their own games, which is really kind of cool. David Thompson's coming in tomorrow to do a run through By Stealth and Sea, which David could only be here for one event. I don't know if he's still in the chat. He was here earlier. He only had the time to be able to be here for one event tomorrow. But Ryan Heilman is coming in for a couple. Ryan Heilman and Dave Shaw. Kevin Bertram from Fort Circle, Shores of Tripoli. He's going to be leading folks through Shores of Tripoli. I don't know that we get all of these dudes if it's an in-person convention somewhere where folks got to get on planes or, getting cars.
Not. Yeah.
Even in non-pandemic times, I don't know that we get all of those dudes.
No. More than likely not. You're correct. I mean, because not everybody can commit time off of work, time to travel and the money and everything else to get to convention. But here with digital conventions, you can get everybody in one spot.
Yeah. And so, again, audience, chime in on it some. Does it make a difference if you've got the designer there as a part of the experience? Is that something that makes you, more interested in something or maybe less interested in something? Is that something that grabs your attention and really, sort of gets you more enthused about the event, or is it just sort of shrug, okay, at least they know the rules, is it sort of, where do you sort of see that in its attractiveness? So.
Yeah, and David making a comment here says, Shores of Tripoli and White Eagle Defiant were two of my top games of the year. It is a great opportunity to learn from these guys because I've not played White Eagle Defiant. I played Brave Little Belgium, which is what that game system is based on.
Yeah,
and it's a sequel to it, their second game. That was a really fun game. And if you're looking for introductory war games for your family members, for friends, things like that you're trying to hoodwink into the dark side, there are two games right there, Shores of Tripoli and White Eagle Defiant, that you can definitely draw them in with because they're attractive games on the table. And especially Shores of Tripoli is just over the top. The production quality and that's fantastic.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful game.
Yeah, the photos in our review don't do it justice, and that's because I'm a bad photographer, but it's cool.
When I put it on the table the first time, my wife's like, well, she saw the cover and she's like, oh, that's really cool. And she's like, the first thing she said, that looks like the Marine uniform because the blues and the blood stripe.
Yeah.
And I said, Shores of Tripoli, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Then it kind of clicked on her.
The light went on. Yeah.
Oh, I said, it's the Marines. They're part of the story. It's just the overall Barbary pirates. And she's like, oh, okay. And when she saw it on the table, she's like, wow, this is a really neat game. This is really pretty. Yeah. And she was very impressed with it. And she's not a war gamer. But I was able to hoodwink her into playing and she enjoyed it, and it's kind of like, what is that game now? I just totally had a brain freeze. Battle Cry. First time I had Battle Cry on the table, I got it really cheap. So I was like, yeah, I want to put it on the table. I'm playing it. It's Memoir 44 ACW. So I'm playing it and I'm like, this is kind of neat. It's fun. I'm going to blast playing it solitaire. My wife comes in and she goes, ooh, what's this? And she's picking up all the pieces. She's like, show me how to play. I was like, okay. 7 games later, she's like, this is fun. So it was really cool.
7 games later, and Moe is 1-6.
Exactly. And the Command 10, I like his idea here. He says, I think it would be fun to live stream well-known designers going head-to-head against each other, playing 2 games, one that each designed, with color commentary from Moe and Grant. Grant? Who's Grant?
He's that guy from the Player's Aid.
I think he meant you, but no, I do like that idea. And I think that is something that we should do at some point. But I think it would be best to have the 2 designers doing the commentary, because it would be more fun, I think, to listen to them. Because if you ever get a chance to be around a couple of designers playing each other's games, you're going to hear the questions, and some really good questions that they'll throw at each other over the design decisions and stuff. You'll get a lot of insight into those games.
Yeah, one of the first tabletop war games I ever designed, self-published. It was the original Warfighter system back in 2005, and a half an hour, sitting at a table with Pete Bogdasarian, who designed the Core Command series and the Tank on Tank series. After a half an hour sitting at the table with Pete, I almost wanted to give up. Like he had asked so many good questions that I really needed to ask like 18 months earlier. But I didn't know Pete 18 months earlier to have had those conversations. But yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have playtesters playtest stuff and give you some feedback. It's another thing to have designers who are a little more familiar with kind of what goes on under the hood, sort of poke at you a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely something that really makes a difference. I will tell you, so the one of the first couple of games of Shores of Tripoli that I played, my opponent was Jim Werberneth, the game designer and CSR award-winning magazine publisher. Yep. And Jim's been around for a long time, got a bunch of great games out there. When we finished Shores of Tripoli, Jim is like a verbal exhale. Was like, wow, that was a lot of fun. So, it's cool when you've got another game designer sort of, really talking it up. Mm-hmm. And that was a good time. So,
well, the funny thing with Shores of Tripoli, Kev, one of the guys from Whiskey Charlie, Kev Sharp, the big board, he likes the complex. I mean, he likes the simpler games too, the lighter games, but he really likes the meatier games. And I'll never forget, he texted me. He's like, dude, what the hell is this game? He goes, I don't get it. I don't get it. He was just, he didn't play it yet. He was just looking at it. He's like, this seems like it's kind of almost like very narrow. Like it's almost on rails. It just seems too light. I said, trust me, sit down, play it. And it was the second time he did this, because the first time he did it, was like, this is stupid. He texted me about Brief Border Wars. He's like, nah, this is just bad. I said, trust me. And I started telling him all about the different games and my insights on it, what I thought of it. So he's like, okay, I'll trust you. I'll trust you this time. I'm going to play it. And then like a couple days later, he's like, yeah, you were right. And then it was the same with Shores of Tripoli. He comes back and he's like,
and there's Moe taking a victory lap, right?
Yeah, exactly. So then he did it again with Shores of Tripoli. He's like, yeah, at first glance, I thought it was going to be too light. And there's actually good decisions to be made here. This is a surprisingly interesting game that doesn't have a lot of overhead. And I said, that's the beauty of the game, is because the card play is going to be, I mean, there is some, it's not like you have a really broad decision space, but you do have a lot of decisions to make along the way. And also it all depends on what cards come out at what time and die rolls and everything else going to play, but a lot of fun. And my initial thing on it is, if you're the Americans, attack Tripoli from the get-go. Just keep hammering. Don't let those Corsairs get out, because I've won a few times as the Tripolitan player by just doing, I was like, okay, I'm just going to burn a card. I'm just going to keep getting Corsairs. I got 9. Hey, boom, go out there. And you roll and get one, you get 1, 5, or 6. And you're like, that sucked. But then I've also had it where I've gone out with 8 or 9. I've gotten 6. And I'm like, halfway there, on one roll. So.
I've had success as the the pirate player by getting the Swedes out of the game as early as possible. Get the Swedes out of the way, and then you can get out there a little more. So that's a good thing. The TCT should know that at this point in my life, if it's close, I like Brant, Brad, Bryant, Grant. Like, I'm gonna answer.
Well, if
my last name more than my first name, so.
Well, the one thing I will say when it comes to the designer presence, we've got, like you said, David Thompson, and then we've got who else? We've got
David Thompson here, Ryan Heilman and Dave Shaw. Kevin Bertram from from Fort Circle is here. The guys from Ad Astra, it's Ken and Mike and those guys. They're the designers. That's the team from Ad Astra. Mm-hmm. The guys from the dudes from Lock and Load, it's not the designers because some of the designs predate Dave's ownership of the of the thing. So those were Mark's original designs from when Mark owned Lock and Load. But at this point, Keith is the guy who's the primary developer on World at War, and he's leading the World at War game that's going on right now. If you guys wanted to drop in a Discord, you could watch that. And then Stefan is the guy, and I'm going to butcher Stefan's last name, so I'm just not even going to try. So Stefan is the dude that is the lead developer on Lock and Load Tactical now, and so he's here. So we've got, and then Scott Moore, who's the designer on this War Without an Enemy. He's going to be running that game. So we've got a bunch of dudes who have designed their own games. They're, and Dave obviously is floating around in here. So that's what we've got. I saw a little further up in the chat, Andrew Buchholz was talking about one of the cool things he liked about San Diego was having a bunch of the designers there. Mm-hmm. Harold's a little more well-connected than I am in the wargaming world because Harold's worked for GMT for a bunch of years as a designer. Yeah. So, when he calls Mark Herman doesn't go, Harold who? I'm not even going to get past Mark's secretary, right? It's just the reality of it. I mean, I know a bunch of people, but I don't know the real high-level folks that they can get down in San Diego. We do have Brian Train is going to be here tomorrow. He's doing an interview with Dan over at No Enemy Here. Brian isn't demoing any of his games, but he is going to be here for an interview. Dana Lombardi is doing a World War I presentation on Sunday morning, so we do have him here to talk some. Again, he's not GMing a game, but he's here to talk about the design of the World War I card game that he and Roger did. Mm-hmm. Who am I missing, Mo? I mean, we have 40-something events this week.
The one I was going to tell you, or I was going to mention, was Greg Smith. Tomorrow, he's going to be tomorrow and Sunday. He's going to be running demos of Pacific Tide. And the way if you're not familiar with Pacific Tide by Compass Games, I would say the easiest way to explain it is like when people say, what game do I recommend for a newer gamer, or what game, what would be a good intro game? What would be a good, fun, easy to understand game that I can play real simple and get it inexpensively? I would say Cells is a great starter because you can play Bulge in 2 hours. Now it's only a segment of the Bulge, but still, how many Bulge games can you play in about 2 hours? Not many. So that right there is a great one. And Pacific Tide is the same type of idea. It's like you have Bitter Woods and all these other big giant Bulge games, Ardennes 44 and all. Then you have Cells. Well, you've got Empire of the Sun, which is the great Pacific game. And then you have Pacific Tide, which is like EOTS Light is the way I look at it. It's kind of like that. You're getting the full Pacific War Theater in 3 hours or less, and Greg is going to be running that tomorrow. And let me tell you something. John was talking about designers not being fun, not being interesting. Greg's a character. So go do that demo for sure. Cause he'll talk your ear off, and he's funny as hell. And he's got a lot of great insights into the design, and he'll teach it to you. So if you've never played it, go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you talk about some war games to help get newbies into it. I will stand on the desk all day long for Tank on Tank for teaching new folks how to play. That is one of the easiest games to jump into. It is very cool action that folks can get into, because who doesn't like blowing stuff up with tanks? So it's something that everybody can get into. One of the other things that I think is a little underrated about Tank on Tank that I really like is it adapts very well to minis. I've taken the old Axis and Allies collectible minis game and rolled those maps out and used some of the tanks and infantry and anti-tank guns from there as proxies for the tank on tank counters, and played some on the go scenarios, sort of pickup kind of scenarios, using the A&A minis. And so that's something that's a little more visually attractive for the younger kids. That I think is kind of cool. But tank on tank games, there's some surprising tactical depth to those scenarios, but they play quick. And I think the rule book's like 6 pages. I mean, it is a real quick rule book. So.
No, it's a very fast rule book. And like you said, you could play with the counters or minis, and tanks are always going to, if you want to get your kids into war games, tanks are always going to attract kids. And if you can proxy in some minis instead on the maps, even better. Just put them on top of the counter, and the kids are going to be totally in on it because everybody loves tanks until they're on a tank, and then they find out that
put some tanks on the table.
yeah, it's true. But everybody's into tanks until they get on a tank, and then they find out there's like 9,000 hours of maintenance for every 1 hour of operation. And you're like, damn, I thought I was a tanker, not a mechanic.
Yeah, everybody loves climbing around on a tank until it's time to, like tighten down in connectors or something, and then suddenly nobody's fond. When it's time to break track, everybody disappears.
Yeah, and the one that is the best part about being a tanker, especially if you want a good workout, and they do all these different workout things. Be a loader in the battalion FPF when you have to expend all ammo and you got 64 rounds inside the vehicle, and you're just humping around, just bam, 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 taking them out of honeycombs and slamming them into the breech nonstop. And then you're just kind of juggling yourself, dancing on top of all these shell casings at the bottom of the turret. It's a trip. And then trying to find a little bit of downtime to start tossing them out of the turret. It's a lot of fun and a good workout. Sucks.
Somebody right now is doing the math going, wait a minute, M1 only holds 40 rounds. The old 105s held more.
Yeah, exactly. 63 in a honeycombs, 1 in the tube.
And the old 105s had the full length casing that looks like that looks like large brass from a regular rifle, where the 120s, you've just got the aft cap. It's caseless ammo, so you've just got the aft cap with the igniter in there, and it's very small. A lot of tankers end up putting those aft caps on their desks as ashtrays.
Yeah, and it's exactly Well, we used to use the old big ones too for ashtrays in the day room and stuff like that, because you can let them sit there for a couple of weeks before you had to empty them out. Yeah. So,
but it's odd in that the larger round takes up less space in the turret after you fire it, but that's how the 120s evolved.
Yeah.
So you've got fewer rounds, they do a little more damage, and they make less mess in the turret.
Yeah, that's true. And you also get less of a workout. You get the better workout. It's kind of like you get that full body workout when especially if you got a bunch of heat rounds in there. Like Sabo is not a bad deal. I forget what the Sabos were. I think they were like 30 pounds or something like that. But then you have heat rounds, which are like 55 pounds, I think, or something like that. And you're humping that thing up off the floor. That was the best part, when you put them in the ready racks. And when you're a loader, you can design your honeycomb the way you want. Yep. So you always have them in the 6 round or 8 round stand up rack, because you just grab them by the stem, well, not the service rounds, but the training rounds, you just grab them by the stem and just pick them up and slam them in.
Roll them in there. Yep.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
The one of these days when we're in person and not just on video, I've got a really fun range story from Fort Carson to tell you, that about a tank that ended up somewhere a tank should not be on a live fire. So,
oh really?
Yes, but it's tough to tell without the appropriate visuals, and it's tough to really get those visuals across on a webcam like this. So we'll have to wait till we're in person sometime and a couple of beers in and have a good time. I will tell you that when I was right after I got off active duty, I was in the California Army National Guard for a while. And the tank battalion that I belonged to out there was 149 Armor, which its lineage goes back to the 194th Tank Battalion, which was one of the units that was on Corregidor when the Philippines fell in 42. And so when we had our dining in, again, this was 25-ish years ago at this point. When we would have our dining in, like, we had Bataan survivors that would come to the dining in, which was really a very humbling, very cool thing to have there. but we had a training facility. So we had our regular armories, but we had an extra armory that was under our administrative control that we didn't have a unit that was occupying, but we were responsible for taking care of it. Well, what our battalion decided to do was to take all of the training aids and simulators and everything else that we had assigned to our battalion, and rather than parcel them out among the different armories, we consolidated them all into this one empty armory and made this one sort of Uber training location where we had the trailer mounted simulator, the big UCOF simulator. And so it was, for the folks at home, this is the tank gunnery simulator where you're actually sitting in half of a turret with the TC and the gunner sitting in there looking through their actual sights. You're shooting bad 90s Nintendo graphics, but still you've got all the right switches and everything in place to train your crew on how to shoot. We had those in place. We had the National Guard have another one that actually bolts to the outside of the tank, which is kind of cool. You basically were bolting a flat screen onto the sights on the tank. So where you're sitting in the actual tank looking through it to see stuff, which is kind of neat. We put all of these things in one place, and the California State National Guard headquarters kind of freaked out when we first briefed this plan to them, because this was only like a year or two after that dude had stolen the tank and gone on that rampage through San Diego where he was like crushing cars and everything. Oh, God, and so everybody's like, wait a minute, you want to leave a tank in an unmanned armory? I'm like, well, yeah. And they said, well, what happens if it gets out? I said, well, first of all, this is one of the hangar queens, right? This thing hasn't moved on its own power in like 7 years. Yeah. But second of all, part of what we're doing when we put it in there, we're taking the engine out the back because we're going to have a room just for the mechanics to practice all the diagnostics and everything on the engines. And M1 engines roll in and out very easily. It's not like an M60 engine where you need a lot of work to get it out. M1 engine,
that damn thing out,
yeah. They pop out and roll out on skids pretty easily. And so we were going to have the engine for the tank that was inside there with all the simulator stuff bolted to it. It was going to be in another room separated from everything else. And so, the state headquarters is asking, they're like, so what are you going to do if somebody steals this tank? We're like, well, in order to steal this tank, they've got to repair an engine, put it back in, put fuel in it. They've got to get through the armory security and the airport security because the armory was contiguous with a local airport right there. Like, assuming they can get through 2 layers of security, repair an engine, put it back in, and then fuel it up to drive. At that point, we should hire these guys. Like, we shouldn't be arresting them. Like, put them to work.
If they can get that power pack fixed and back into the vehicle and they can take off with it, hey, more power to them.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the funny thing is, I do remember when that was happening because they were talking about that. And I remember calling into a radio station when that guy went on that little rampage driving the M60. And they were saying, oh, my, what happens if he shot people with it? And so I was like, oh, my, I was listening to these people, calling into the radio station. He could have shot people with it. And blah, blah. I was like, oh, my God, these people are dumb. So I called in and I was like, okay, let me explain something to you here. And I was like,
the ammo is nowhere near.
Ammo is in a magazine. That's completely separate. Weapons are in the armory. There's the main gun, but he's got to get to the magazine to get the ammo out of there. Then he's got to load it up. And this is not Rambo. He can't drive and shoot at the same time. Yeah. He's going to have to get out and then get inside the turret basket, load the round, and then shoot it. And then he's going to have to load another one and shoot it again. So I was like, it's not as simple as you think. It's not a video game. So, driving alone is danger enough with a tank. So,
yeah, and you can't see anything. So
that's true.
Now, all right. Some of the guys in the chat are making fun of us for telling war stories here.
I like this one. Ignoring the targets and firing into Indiana. Max elevate, fire.
Even there, you've got to get the round to go over Louisville before you get to Indiana. I mean, that's a long ass shot.
It is.
I will say when we were at Fort Knox with my armor officer basic course, just for folks that don't know, the armor school has moved to Fort Benning. It's consolidated with the infantry school as a maneuver school at Fort Benning. So the tanks aren't at Fort Knox anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not. The when I was there with my armor officer basic course, the week we were out at the range we were on, they were going to completely tear down and bulldoze and totally rebuild after we were done shooting. End of fiscal year was coming up. They had committed the money to rebuilding that range. So after we were done with all of the engagements we were supposed to do, they just brought up all the targets and said, shoot whatever the hell y'all want. And I'm like, okay. Nice. Give a bunch of new lieutenants a chance to just shoot whatever they want. And so now guys are trying to shoot the 4x4s that are holding up the target silhouettes to see if they can knock the silhouette over that way. One of the dudes spotted a flock of wild turkeys on the range.
No.
With a sabot through one of them.
Oh no, really? He got the sabot through it.
I mean, it was awesome. A training sabot, but still. It was,
still, yeah. You got that damn hot dart that's going a mile and a half a second. That's gonna ruin someone's day. I remember out in Stumps, this was at the very end when they started they got rid of the beehive and they got rid of the old apers, and then they got rid of the HEP rounds. But the HEP rounds were fun because the high explosive plastic. You'd fire them at the tire targets that we had, and it was the coolest sight ever because you'd hit those things and the tire targets would just kind of explode. Tires would fly like 100 feet in the air on fire and everything. It was just a really cool visual. And then they went from that, because it wasn't environmentally friendly, they went to plywood targets. It's like, how dull. Yeah. There's no feedback.
Yeah. We when I was stationed at Fort Hunter Liggett, the tank range there, the base is a giant V shape, and along the boundaries of the base is California State Highway G14. And so when we went out to gunnery, all the local town would pull up along the highway and park right at the baseline of the fence, because from the baseline of the tank range to the fence where the highway was maybe 100 feet. It was not very far at all. And so when we were doing night fire, man, you'd look back there and there's like 30, 40 pickup trucks and vans parked there. Like, guys get out their lawn chairs and sit in the bed of the pickup and watch us shoot night fire. And it got to the point where we had the commo dudes set up one of the Humvees with a couple of external loudspeakers so that they could monitor the tank crew in the radio, where the tower sets up where they can hear the fire commands going on in the turret of the tank. That's part of what you get evaluated on when you're firing gunnery. Mm-hmm. And they set these things up so that the crowd could hear outside.
That's cool. That would be cool. To like you get set up like live stream at table 8.
That's basically what it was. And folks were sitting there watching. Like, we could have sold popcorn and made a killing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it would be cool too, because it would show people what the vehicles do and what the crews do, and how every person in a crew is important. Now there's a show on, I haven't watched the whole thing. I watched like the first 3 episodes, Valley of Tears. It's on HBO Max.
Okay.
And we have HBO Max for a month. So I started watching it about the Yom Kippur War. Mm-hmm. And they moved the tanks out. And I was like, okay, let's see how they do this. Do they screw this up or not? Man, I was like, they were in turret down. And then they pull up the hull down. I was like, okay. Then they just started lighting up Syrian tanks. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Why are you firing 4 and 5 shots from the same damn spot? I was like, fire 1, back down, go up, and then, fire 2 and then back down and go to an alternate position. They didn't follow everything exactly right. But the thing that I did think was cool was just little tiny detail that I was like, that is awesome. As they're pulling up into the hull down, you hear driver stop, and then firing or whatever the Israeli command was that the gunner was saying, shooting or something, and he pulls the trigger and goes. But I like the fact that they showed that the gunner is the one who gives the driver the command to stop. I was like, that is a pretty neat little detail that they got in there. It was a small detail, but it was a right detail.
It's interesting you mentioned the Valley of Tears. Before we went live here, I was actually watching the live stream of the World at War game, where Keith and Devin have some players in there. Keith and Devin from Lock and Load have some players in there, and they were teaching the World at War series. And Keith was actually talking about having watched some of Valley of Tears just over nice. Or so. And so now he's all, gung ho about wanting to do a Middle East adaptation for World at War. And,
well, there's going to be a lot. I mean, there's a lot planned for World at War. Yeah, they're going to hit that, because the World of War series, for those who are not familiar with World of War 85 was done by Lock and Load about a year ago. on Kickstarter, and it is the Fold a Gap.
Came out about a year ago.
Yeah, and it's Fold a Gap, and the next 2 volumes are coming out, and all of these volumes that are planned, and there's a lot. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
It's literally, I mean, it's called World at War 85. It is literally the entire world at war. So every country, any country that you want to see involved in a war, trust me, they'll get to it eventually in one of the later volumes. Because
and the original World at War series back under when Mark still owned Lock and Load, ended up with 10 or 12 different scenario packs between separate boxes and some folios and some things in Line of Fire magazine. And so there was a module in there with the South Africans. There was a module in there with like the Cubans invading Texas. I mean, there were some that some people kind of looked at and said, yeah, that's a little silly. I'm not 100% sure what Dave's full reboot plans are. I know Dave has them. I don't know how much of it has slipped out into public, so I'm not sure what we can really talk about. But I know they've announced a couple of the ones that are coming that are going to kind of flesh out what's going on in Europe. And it's not a secret that they're going to get back to the Mideast at some point. I just don't think they're there yet. So
yeah, they're going to get to the Middle East. There's going to be the United States as well. The United States will be under attack. I can tell you that. And like I said, there is not going to be a hot spot that's not covered in the world. That's the plan. So, and I don't think that he's really announced everything yet, but that's the entire plan. It's the entire plan.
Announced the attack in the U.S. So, Dave, if you see this, Moe slipped out, not me, right? Moe's the one that spilled that. So
yeah, so it's going to be interesting. But as far as what we were talking about before with designers, does anybody else have any feedback? We haven't heard anything else. We've been kind of going off with this tank talk.
We've been telling war stories, right?
What else? And that's what happens during a happy hour. But what else would you guys like to see in a digital convention? What is there any aspect of a personal convention, that an in-person convention, that you think could be brought into a digital convention that is not here yet, that you've not seen? We definitely would like to hear feedback on that, because like I said, Armchair Dragoons are working with Harold for his SD HistCon and vice versa. And anybody else is going to do a war game convention. Everyone's open to sharing information to try to make everybody's convention succeed and do better, because that's how the evolution works. Everybody does do new things and it gets better each time.
I think it goes beyond just the war game conventions too, though, because like my buddy from Gamma may stop by this weekend and just pop into the Discord and check things out and ask us some questions. We've had some other people reach out through Twitter, some of the folks that do some of the role-playing things, just to ask what our experience has been for some stuff. One of the things that I did do that there wasn't a specific piece of feedback for about this from either our surveys last year or the SD guys, but again, it cost literally nothing to do. It took 5 minutes to do. We have a room set up in the Discord that is specifically for pickup games. Mm-hmm. So a couple of guys are talking in the general chat and they say, hey, it'd be really cool if we could do one of these. There's a room set up where there's a couple of voice channels in there that you launch a Vassal module and both of you sign in, and we've got a voice channel set up already that you could hop in there and go play some pickup games. Again, I don't know if it's even going to get used at all, but it's there and available if people want it. Mm-hmm. I see Stigler's comment about the tournaments up there on screen. So Stigler, here's what I'll tell you. We've had a devil of a time with tournaments over the years. We did so in real life conventions. We did a Twilight Struggle tournament at Origins a couple of years ago that got 4 or 5 participants, none of whom played in a single other event that we had. So we had a bunch of non-war gamers show up for the Twilight Struggle convention, and we'll table the discussion as to whether or not that's indicative of Twilight Struggle being a war game. We'll save that for another time. The person that won was actually, she was a Trekkie. She was there in her Trek uniform, which was kind of cool. Nice. But we had 5 people show up for a tournament that was going to seat 8. We had a lock and load tournament one time that we had 3 show up for, where we had 8 available seats. We had a maneuver tournament one time where the designer was actually going to be there for the final game and sign a copy of the game for the winner and everything. And we had nobody sign up for it at all.
Oh, wow.
And so for this weekend, Kevin Bertram, Shores of Tripoli, actually offered to run Shores of Tripoli as a tournament. And I told him no. And I said, let's just set it up as 2 separate individual games that folks can jump in and play, because I was just concerned that folks at a convention setting like this weren't going to want to commit to playing the same game 3 and 4 times instead of sort of sampling from the buffet, right?
Yeah.
Want to play a whole bunch of different stuff. Part of that is colored a little bit by our experience with real world conventions. I just don't see us doing any more tournaments at Origins because they just don't attract the kind of attention we were expecting. I'm totally willing to try one at a digital convention if we think there's interest beyond Stigler. It's just.
Well, John wants to do a tournament where he's issued a donkey and a lance. So what is the name of that game? Jackasses on a jackass, or jackass jousting? That would be what I think would be the best name for that, jackass jousting.
We can find a jackass and we can find a theater ballistic missile. And
there's plenty of jackasses. The hard part is getting the donkeys, but I think it would be kind of neat. But I think, going to what Stigler was saying about the tournaments, I think tournaments in a virtual environment would be better handled in a virtual tournament environment only. Meaning we're having an event this Saturday, Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, and it's going to be the ASL virtual tournament, or it's going to be the Lock and Load Tactical virtual tournament, or whatever. And that's all you're going to do. And there's nothing that's stopping you from, in the Discord, getting together with somebody and playing something else.
Yeah.
But it would be specifically for, you have a game scheduled at 9:00, you have a game scheduled at 12 or 1 or whatever. You played through your ladder. And then on Sunday, you might play based on your bracket. You play again, however many times, till you come up with a winner. And that would be the only way to do that, I think, because running tournaments is a different thing altogether. It's you're essentially running a mini league. So,
well,
that would take a lot of effort.
Weekend that we're here, MMP is doing their Great Campaigns, the American Civil War.
Yes.
Weekend. I don't know if they're structuring it as a tournament or just trying to pair off as many players as they can of similar experience. Mm-hmm. This would have been the weekend that MMP's Winter Offensive was being held in person, which is typically an ASL heavy event. They decided to convert it to GCACW for this weekend. And so that's going right. And they've, the last time I saw MMP post some info on social media about it, they had probably 60 people signed up just for a single game that whole weekend. Gary Ardwolf was originally going to do a GCACW game this weekend and decided to hold off on it because of MMP doing their thing. And so now Gary's doing the OCS boot camp tomorrow night. And his OCS boot camp was the first event to sell out. Yeah. That was the first one to fill up.
Well, the funny thing is you've got John here making a comment about unboxings, and if you're not familiar with what he's talking about here, I'm going to give you an example. He's talking about Bill from the president of Compass, how he does his unboxings live on the show, because they do a show every couple of weeks. And it's funny because what he'll do is he'll do something like, hey, we got this game here, and I'm just grabbing various crap on my desk, and we're like, yeah, we got a map, you see it, it's, and it's all over the place. It's not going to show that well on my thing. And we've got this, and then we've got this, he just throws stuff up on the thing, and it's usually half off the camera. With my virtual background, it disappears, but you have to see it to understand it. And I actually made the joke that one of these days I'm going to do an unboxing in that format, just because I think it would be funny. And I think I'll have to do it for a Compass game. I'll do it as a joke, and then I would do like a real true preview, but I would do it and send it to Bill. He'd probably get a kick out of it.
You owe us an unboxing for this coming Thursday anyway, don't you?
Yes, I will have to see what I can do an unboxing of. Space Infantry Federation, I just got in, and real excited for that one, because that one started life as a game with Victory Point Games. Nathan Hansen had the design at the time, working through Victory Point, and then the whole fiasco with that when they got bought out and then they got let go, all the designers. Thankfully, the designs went back to the designers themselves. So I reached out to Nathan and I says, hey, could you send me some information about this game, that you were working on, Saul? And he sent me the information. I was looking at it and going, wow, this could be rethemed. This could fit into the Space Infantry universe. And I've done work with Lock and Load for several years. So I said, would you be open to retheming this and, changing some things around? And he said, yeah, sure. After a discussion, it wasn't like he just said, yeah, sure. But I was telling him why. So then I reached out to Dave and I says, hey, I got this game that I think would be really good. And it's a solitaire game and it's a State of Siege game, but it's not your standard State of Siege game.
Yeah.
Where you just sit there and take it on the chin. It is kind of a hybrid of different things. There's almost like a 4X type of element to it. And you're moving out. You have to put bases on planets. You have to do political aspects of it. You're not going to want to fight everybody, because if you do, you're going to lose. You're going to spread yourselves too thin. So you're going to do some politics, some sabotage, some spy stuff, some subversion, basically, as well as some kinetic fighting. And it's got a little bit of everything in it in a State of Siege type of format. So I think it's really cool, and it would fit right into the Space Infantry universe. And so he's like, yeah, sure, that's cool. So him and Nathan got together and talked, and now it's out and it's part of the Space Infantry universe, and it looks really cool.
I remember. So the original Space Infantry game, I think, predates the stuff you're talking about at Victory Point, because the original Space Infantry game was under the old Lock and Load way back when. So it's and
then they came out with Space Infantry Resurgence, where they basically put everything into one box. Yeah. And this is a totally separate game that just kind of fleshes out the Space Infantry universe a little bit more, but it's a solitaire game too.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. That sounds kind of, and it's tough because like some of those solitaire games are a lot of fun. Like there's a couple of States of Siege games that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Empires of America. That was pretty cool. The challenge is like the States of Siege games, you just can't do it at convention like this. I mean, solitaire games don't work at conventions.
Well, you can't say that, because David Thompson's going to do By Stealth and Sea tomorrow, and that's a solo game. So you can run through it as far as teaching people, but I think the way you do By Stealth and Sea as a multiplayer game, and if Dave's still in the chat, he can chime in. You have multiple teams of the Italian Frogmen going in there, so you can give each player a team, so that's it's cooperative, right? It's competition.
You're playing on the same side, but you're competing against each other on the same side. It's interesting. Battles Magazine, I think somewhere around number 7 or so, did a game that was a race for Berlin. That the two players are both Russian armies trying to be the first one to get to Berlin. So you're both playing against the Germans. You're not impacting each other, but you're just trying to race to Berlin as fast as you can. So I could totally see By Stealth and Sea working out that way, where each of the players is playing somebody different on the same side. So that might work.
Yeah, I think the other way to do it too is if you have a solitaire game and you're trying to present it in this type of format, would be, okay, I'm explaining to you how my game works. So like if David's talking about By Stealth and Sea, for example, this is how the game works. Here's the rules. Here's the movement. Here's what everything does, blah, blah, blah. Go through the whole preliminary thing. Say, okay, now first move, I'm going to do this, and this is why. And then we're going to do this, and this is why. All right, everybody got a feel for it now? Okay, what do you think I should do now? Should I do this?
Yeah.
Or this, or this? You get that feedback, that little feedback loop going, and get people thinking they get more into the game rather than just sitting there going, okay, yeah, cool.
No, totally. That would definitely work. So, something I do want to ask the audience about, just because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to reach out and see if there was any involvement, any interest from other people for it, but look, we're a wargaming site. We've got wargaming folks here with you, with Dan, with Gary, with all these other folks that are involved, the other content creators that are involved. It's wargaming, like end to end, wall to wall. We are wargaming. But I did reach out to a couple of folks I know in the RPG world just to see if anybody was interested in like being able to run or offer a military themed RPG like Recon or T2K or something similar to that, just to have another option on the table. I don't know if that's something that anybody out there in audience land would give a rip about, if that's something that would, just be a giant yawn and nobody register, or if that's something that people would be like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool to actually get a chance to do something like that. Like we're not going to RPG command because we'd get through like 2 turns and it would take 6 hours.
Yeah.
But if some of the others might be of interest to you, we could pull up one of the Weird Wars scenarios from Savage Worlds and do something. If that's something that would be of interest, I don't know. So, you know, since we're asking the audience, just curious what folks would think. So,
well, I think something like that would be good. And you can get a lot of people involved in it, because like one of the ones I had mentioned was you said Twilight 2000, and that one is in alpha right now. It's released in alpha, and then they've got the full game, I think, due out sometime this year. Is the plan.
February, isn't it?
Is it February that they're going to have the final? I thought it was like summertime.
Is it that
I
late?
forget. I backed it. And I forget when.
Yeah,
when
me too.
And I picked up the Aliens RPG, and I also got Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core. And I figured, you know what, I can always use the miniatures for Aliens RPG, but with everything going on right now, it's like, well, it's not like I need them because we're not going to be in person. But RPGs are great for playing virtual, because if you have a virtual tabletop that you can use, everybody can join in. And I think for a wargamer's perspective, Twilight 2000 would be great. Aliens RPG would be great, because you could be a bunch of colonial Marines and you run around saying all kinds of, everybody would be repeating one-liners from Hudson all night long and just shooting Xenos. I think it would be kind of fun. But here's one that TCT brought up. He said, could y'all do some sort of Kriegspiel or a CPX over the course of the convention, assuming you could find someone to umpire it?
Yeah, I was just replying to him in the chat also. We've looked into a couple of different options. So there are some ways, Cyrano has looked into a couple of different ways that we could try and do a Kriegspiel through Tabletop Simulator, because Tabletop Simulator does do a pretty good job of giving you some fog of war and some limited intelligence. But essentially what you almost need 8 different tables, each with one person sitting at it, to really do it right. And at that point, it just becomes a computing horsepower challenge, because you've got to be running 8 instances of Tabletop Simulator at that point. And that's a little challenging. The guys out at Leavenworth, including one of the guys who is our lead coach for the CPXs at Origins, has looked into a couple of different ways that we could try and do something similar to a CPX in an environment like this. And one of the advantages we have with the CPXs, the way we do those, is for those that aren't familiar with the CPXs we do at Origins, just the thumbnail version of it, it is a cooperative event where we bring everybody in, and you guys are a battalion staff. We organize, you know, Commander, XO, Ops, Fires, Plans, Intel. Like we give everybody a staff job. We give them a couple of minutes to sort of teach them what those staff roles entail and a briefing around the scenario. And we give them a short 20, 30-minute block of instruction on the military decision-making process. Like, how do you write a battalion level operations order? And then we let them put this together, put this thing together, put this plan together. And then we put the plan into the computer and we say, go. And the game we use the Flashpoint Campaigns series games. And one of the reasons for that is we've got the dev team that's there as a part of our CPX team. So the guys from On Target Sims, Rob and Jim and Jeff, are part of they're our coach team as well. And so everybody is playing together as, you know, the Americans in the Fulda Gap against the Russians, for whatever that may be. So to do something like that in a convention environment like this wouldn't be the technological challenges are a lot easier in that case, because there's the one game that everybody's watching happen while everybody else is essentially in a giant Zoom room shared together where you can have those conversations. The challenge we run into with the CPXs are kind of the physical artifacts, because a lot of what happens is you're grabbing a map and literally drawing on the overlay right there in front of everybody. You're literally sketching stuff out and scribbling notes and then walking over to the sim operator, because the players never touch the computer in the CPXs. Mm-hmm. Our guys do all of the computer work. And so walking over to the computer operator and saying, okay, I need this aviation unit to go here and look there. That kind of stuff is a little tougher to do in a digital environment.
Sure.
But I think between the Kriegspiels and the CPXs, the CPX might adapt easier to this kind of environment. I think part of the challenge we all have is that the CPXs run so well when we do them in person that we're just all really concerned about how bad it may go if we try to digitize it.
Well, that's the thing, is something like that, you'd probably I think it would have to be worked kind of like what we were saying with the tournaments before. It wouldn't be part of a convention, it would probably be its own entity at that point. You'd probably say, you know what, we're going to do a Kriegspiel weekend or a CPX weekend or whatever, and do it where people are going to be involved in that event specifically. And all the effort was going to be put into that event because of so many, moving pieces to the whole thing.
We've got these things pretty well time boxed into about 4.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So over the course of a long weekend at Origins, where we start stuff Wednesday at noon, is when the events start at Origins. We'll run 4 of those. We'll run one each Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We don't try to run anything on Sunday. Nobody ever shows up for events on Sunday. We just kind of spend that day as our cleanup day. We have, over the last 2 Origins or so, we've dialed back a little on the CPXs in order to get more Kriegspiels in there, because the Kriegspiels, we get a good crowd for those.
Mm-hmm.
But the CPXs have always been kind of one of those cool destination events. Like, we get people come to Origins just to play in those, and then they'll find other stuff they want to do, when they're not in those with us. But
hold on a second. Shut up, Tom. All right, go back.
So you're torpedoing that suggestion. Is that what I hear?
Yeah. Continue.
So the CPXs have kind of become one of those tentpole events for our stuff at Origins. And honestly, that stuff predates the Origins wargaming program that we were doing. A lot of us got to know each other and be friends and really work together going back long before any of those events, any of the websites associated with the wargaming program at Origins ever existed. Folks know, I'm running Armchair Dragoons these days, but for a bunch of years I was part of Grogheads. And even before Grogheads, those CPXs were around. We used to do them as a part of the Origins War College. But those kinds of events, those go all the way back to 2006 or so that we've been doing those. So we've been all over the place doing those things that they're a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing them. You get some great feedback out of them. There's some videos online that we've posted from some over the years. Some of those events. There was a great line one time doing a World War II one. I want to say it was a bulge game, but I don't remember for sure. That one of the loggies is, somebody's, hey, give me a status report on this and that. And the intel guy sounds off and somebody else sounds off. And the loggie's like, we're out of everything but artillery ammo. It's, well, then shoot more of it. So.
Exactly. I think something like that would be really cool. I've always wanted to participate in a game version of something like that.
Yeah.
Just because I think it would be a great experience. So one of these times I'll have to check that out, hopefully in person, but if not, maybe we can get something going virtual.
Everybody in the chat that's prior service is rolling their eyes going, oh my God, you mean a Janus exercise can be fun? Yes, it can be if it's not something you're forced to do, for 96 hours straight and, with OCs breathing down your neck,
And you can even make it fun in different ways too. You can, of course, relive a, historic battle like Battle of the Bulge or whatever. And then sometimes you could just create a real world, imaginary scenario of today, or you can throw in, there's a pandemic that's happening in the world and the dead are rising. You can turn it into a zombie thing or something. Well, you can do anything.
Part of our limitations with those is that, just the way the event is structured, we sort of need a computer game that the folks are playing against. So again, we've used Flashpoint campaigns a bunch over the last 5-6 years. We literally have the dev team sitting there, and so if anybody knows how to make the game run, it's the guys that wrote it. But in the past, we've used a bunch of stuff from Panther Games Command Ops series. We've done the Nazi attack through the Balkans before, where you're playing the Germans attacking into Greece. So it's a combination of Greece and Commonwealth forces you're fighting against. Mm-hmm. We've done the Bulge in both directions, where you've been the Allies and the Germans. We haven't done them head to head, but we've done exercise in both directions. We did a naval game one year, and I don't remember exactly what it was. I want to say it was Coral Sea. That was one of the ones I was least involved in that year. But we've done a variety of different games over the years, but again, the last several years, we've kind of leaned heavily on the Flashpoint campaigns series. Mm-hmm. I'd be fine drifting afield from that if that's what folks want to do. But because I'm doing more organizing at the macro level for the team, I'm not as involved as a coach as I used to be. So
John saying U-boot is old hat now. The new thing is from Compass with plastic PT666 because they've got devil boats, and that was one of the things that we were joking about in John's chat last night with the designer from Devil Boats. And there's John Kranz himself. The 3D print model of the capsizing PT boat was classic. So this is all part of the inside jokes that go on in the Compass shows every week. And if you are not part of the Compass shows, you are missing out. John does a great job interviewing every week and a designer. And then on the every other week, it is with Bill Thomas, the president of Compass Games. So definitely join in on those as well. And speaking of John, he's got a new CSW site that's going to be going live pretty soon, and that is going to be fantastic. So if you are looking to have a more familiar layout and a really interesting layout, I think everyone's going to really dig the new CSW social layout.
Are we allowed to talk about that? Is John going to like reach through the computer and smack us for?
No. I think he's good with it. As you know, it's not live yet, but there's enough testing going on right now with a bunch of people that I think the feedback that we have is good for the people to hear.
Yeah. I know you and I are both poking around in there some, playing with it a little bit.
Andrew from Down Under. It is Saturday afternoon right now for Andrew.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So welcome, Andrew. Glad you're time traveling to join us here. So So again, look, the feedback from you guys matters. We do listen. We do take it to heart. We implement it as best we can to the best of our ability. One of the things that I'm definitely looking forward to for future conventions beyond this is I am absolutely going to recruit somebody to help with this stuff because there's a certain point at which it gets too big for one person to pull together. Yeah. 90% of what we did back in July was me pulling it together because it was on such short notice that by the time I explained anything to anybody else, it would have been too late to get stuff done.
True.
And so, I was able to hornswoggle you and Gary into helping out with some of the talk show kind of stuff. But other than that, it was a whole bunch of games and hope to God we could make it work. This time around, now I've got people like volunteering to come be GMs and be involved in events and stuff. And at a certain point, it's just going to get too big for one person to pull off. And that's an advantage Harold and the guys out in San Diego definitely have over me, is that they've got a real organization because they've been doing it. I mean, this is what, like year 7, 8, something like that for San Diego at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they've hit double digits yet, but they got to be.
No, they haven't. No, it's close. Yeah. Getting close.
But I mean, Harold's got a team of like 8 dudes working on this thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of John, being that John's here, we have to talk to him about maybe doing a virtual CSW. If, we don't know how 21's going to be. So maybe get a virtual CSW going sometime during the year.
Well, if he does it in Texas, who cares? They'll let everybody show up, Just tell them you're going to do it at the Cowboys Stadium.
That was the last CSW was here in Texas, in Dallas. And,
tell them you're going to do it at Jerry World, and everybody will just open the doors and let everyone in. It'll be fine. So,
well, I loved it because John and I are neighbors. So when did it here in Dallas, I loved it because it's like it was a 7-minute commute to the convention hall.
There you go.
This is awesome.
That's one of the big advantages I have with Origins is that my parents live in Columbus. My dad retired from the Army up there, and so I stay at Casa del Mom. It's great.
Nice.
It's game conventions are a lot cheaper when you're not paying for hotels and you're eating mom's cooking. Let me tell you that.
Well, that, and you also, you don't have to worry about laundry.
Yeah. Well, that definitely makes it all a lot more affordable. But yeah, we could look at a digital CSW if that's something anybody's interested in. One of the other ones, I don't know how much this crowd is necessarily going to dive into it, but the Armchair Dragoons are going to be involved in sort of co-sponsoring the upcoming digital or virtual Connections conference. So the Connections conferences have been sponsored. They start out in the U.S. 25-ish years ago, sponsored by the guys down in Maxwell. And then when Matt Caffrey moved to the Air Force Research Labs in Dayton, AFRL took over sponsorship of this. And they've been co-hosted by a variety of organizations around the country over the years. NDU did it a couple of years. Guys at Quantico did it some. They've had it at Johns Hopkins. They've had it at this coming summer is supposed to be at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. We're not sure it's actually going to happen like that.
Yeah.
They've done them around the country over the years, and then it started to expand. You got a Connections UK, and there's a Connections North coming up next month up in Canada. There's a Connections Oz down in Australia. They've got one just for the Netherlands at this point. So one of the things that some of the folks at Connections have been interested in is part of the problem you run into with Connections is because many of these things take place on military bases, there are limits on who can get access to these things.
Sure.
And so one of the guys said, hey, what if we do one that's just virtual and that anybody can attend because it's online and anybody can be there. We're going to broadcast everything. Anybody that wants to watch can watch. Anybody that wants to participate, we'll find a way to let them help participate. Chris came up with that idea concurrent with us wanting to reach out and get a little more involved in the professional wargaming community. Folks that have been regular readers of our site know that we try to cross-pollinate with the practitioner community in the DoD and security world a bunch. We've had a bunch of podcasts with those guys online, with the guys out at Fort Leavenworth and the wargame design program there. Some of the folks over at the Distal in the UK. We've talked to a lot of these guys and gotten involved with some of the professional wargaming world. And so we were looking at doing something similar to this weekend, but focused on the pros. And both of those ideas were developing in parallel. And one person who was familiar with both of them said, y'all need to talk to each other. So we're going to be involved in the Virtual Connections Conference, kind of as a bit of a co-host, co-sponsor. Cool. That's going to be coming up in April. And I don't remember the exact dates. They're posted on the front page of our website. So go hit that. We have a little countdown going in the corner. That we're going to be involved in that. Now that's a little more professional practitioner focused. It's a lot less sort of just sling dice and have fun. There's going to be a little more discussion of sort of applicability to military training and analysis kind of things. But for folks that might have an interest in that may be something you'd want to go poke around and take a look at.
Yeah. So, and I do think there is a good crossover there with the professional practitioners and the hobbyists, because both can learn from each other. There are a lot of things that the pros do, the professional people do, that the hobby gamers can learn from, the hobby war gamers. And there's things the hobby war gamers could do that the professional war gamers can learn from as well. So I think that crossover, that the more there's crossover, the more that each side is going to bleed into each other. And it's just going to meld into, I think, a better experience for both sides.
Yeah. And one of the things that comes up a lot is, everybody sort of looks at the war games. Memoir 44, you can't learn tactics from Memoir 40. No, you can't. But there are other things that you can do with war games beyond just, how do I learn tactics? There are different kinds of analysis and training and individual skills you can isolate to do. You can use war games for course of action decision making. You can use war games for rehearsals. You can use them to isolate just individual skill sets and train those. So there's a lot you can do with it in the professional world. Testing new doctrine. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Well, one thing that I was surprised to see the other day, they were talking about Memoir 44 being used by the Marine Corps for the new at the Krulak Center. I think is the new thing they're going to be using for war game.
They grabbed a stock image for a thing that doesn't exist yet. That's the other thing everybody's freaking out about. Oh my God, the Marines are going to build a new wargaming center around Memoir 40. They haven't even broke ground on the damn center yet. That's a stock image.
But what got me was I was sitting there going, wait a minute, they're building a war game thing. Do they not use sand tables anymore? I mean, that was something that everybody has used for decades, if not longer.
I couldn't tell you. I know probably, 10, 12 years ago, I was at ITSEC down in Orlando. They had some very, very cool holographic digital sand tables down there.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, so you do a little bit of sculpting with kind of this almost sort of foam silly putty sort of stuff. But then there's an overhead projector that's shooting a holographic image down onto it. So you can overlay your map graphics on the terrain.
Oh, nice. So it creates a topographical map on top of the 3D terrain.
Yeah. And so the 3D terrain just needs to kind of be close because it's projecting the map on top of that. It was pretty sweet. It's pretty nifty. anybody that gets a chance. So again, it's not going to happen this year, but maybe in 2022. It's always the week right after Thanksgiving. There's this giant military sims and training conference down in Orlando. It's called ITSEC. It's the Inter-Industry Training and Simulation something. I don't remember exactly. But it's every simulator and training aid you can possibly imagine. And you're walking through, and it's adult Disneyland is what it is. And you're walking around, and there's like these room-sized B-1 flight simulators where you're sitting in a cockpit with this giant 12-foot tall, 180-degree wraparound screen. And you can sit around and play around in this thing for free. Like that, it's a trade show booth that you get to sit around and mess around with.
That would be awesome. I want a submarine one.
Yeah, there probably is one there.
Nice.
I've been in the one down in Coronado, the sub dive trainer down in Coronado. That's pretty entertaining. But the stuff at ITSEC, I mean, the Orlando Convention Center is enormous anyway. It's like got its own zip code. It's just huge. And it is wall to wall simulator stuff end to end. It's great. It is such a fantastic, like I've been down to Orlando like 4 times for ITSEC. I've never been close to Disney, but I never felt, like I missed it at all. But it is incredible how cool it is.
I wanted to put it out here for everybody. I mean, we schedule this for 90 minutes and it's free to go as long as we want. But before we get any further, I did want to put out there like a last call for questions and comments. So any feedback, like we had asked before about this convention, future conventions, maybe not just this future convention, but future war game conventions, as well as feedback from your experiences so far here and elsewhere. Please put that in there. And if you have any questions specific to this weekend for Brant, put those in there as well, because we want to wrap things up here kind of soon. But we want to make sure that we get all your questions answered as well. So that's a big key for us going forward here. So that way you get all the information you need. And we have a little bit of fun and entertainment here in this show. So, Brant, continue on from there. I didn't want to.
No, I'm just glad you were watching the clock because I've just been having fun and didn't realize.
We're having fun and it's fine. We can go for a while longer. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there's going to be an end here fairly soon. So I wanted to let everybody know, hey, get your questions in now. Let's not wait. And then they'll be like, oh, but I wanted to ask this question. Well, speak up, because we want to answer your questions.
Type now or forever hold your.
Exactly. And we've got Jim in here, and everyone's picking on Jim.
Well, some of the references flying around are quips related to our Saturday Night Fights series, where Jim Ozarski is Cyrano on our site, but he is the ringleader of our Saturday Night Fights events. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, every Saturday night, damn near all year long, Jim is streaming something on YouTube on his channel that's a Dragoons related game. And he organizes all these things on our forum. So people that are interested can go sign up on the forums and find out what's going on. And the thing is, what's interesting about it is Saturday Night Fights. Everybody's like, oh, wow, great. You're getting together for regular gaming because of the pandemic. Nah, man, we started that shit like a year before the pandemic. I mean, these things started in like February of 2019 is when Jim started Saturday Night Fights. And he also does a Wednesday Night Warfare, and we'll occasionally just hop on with him and his son, and he'll live stream them playing Commands and Colors, on a stray Tuesday night here and there. But Saturday Night Fights has been going for quite a while now.
It has. Yeah.
They've the key event that they've been on for a while at this point is refighting the Battle of Leipzig, the French versus the rest of the planet, pretty much. And they're on episode 12 coming up. Is the next one, I think 12 or 13. Jim will correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. At this point, there are more episodes, 3-hour episodes of this Leipzig game than there are Fast and Furious movies. That's how long this has been going. They started this game back in October and playing 3 hours at a clip. They've still got at least 1 or 2 more episodes to go. Jim's saying they're on 13.
Wow. So we've got this here. We've got Stigler now committed to doing Great Battles of the American Civil War at the next convention. We're going to hold him to that because he was asked by John Kranz if he was going to be doing an event because he likes his GBACW play sessions. And the response from Stigler was no, he learned about this too late to organize something. So He might have if he had known earlier. Well, now you know that there will be another one in June. So 0 excuses.
We have a pickup game room.
Yeah,
Stigler, John, y'all figure out when to play. Use the pickup room in the Discord channel and just turn on your live stream so folks can watch it and go play. So we've got it. You can do it. But anyway, some of the comments going back and forth where Jim's looking about finding more Austrians is a callback to one of the Saturday Night Fights games where TCT is playing in one of those games. And I think, again, Jim, you'll chime in here if I think you've got 7 players in the Leipzig game. I think it's 7 dudes playing between the French and the Allies. Yes, I have played in some of the games, not the Saturday night, not Saturday night because I work Saturday nights. But I've played in some Wednesday night Austerlitz games. And then I had to drop out of one of the Austerlitz iterations because we had a family event that night. But it's probably a good thing I did, or the French would have totally got their ass kicked. If I'd still been there playing the French, we were screwed. But fortunately, somebody tagged in to take over the French and pulled out a victory.
Andrew's getting out of some work at his wife's beach market stall by watching this. So we're keeping him away from doing any work, and I'm sure he's not too upset about that.
Yeah. As Jim is noting, I left and the French promptly won. Those two are not unrelated. Either that or you tagged out the dice that your son was using. Jim's son was massacring me with the dice. He's rolling 3 dice to my 7 or 8, and he's rolling 3 hits, and I'm rolling 1. And that happens, enough times that I was pissed. But like, how do you get mad at a 12-year-old for rolling well on the dice? It's only so much you can do. So
you have to do a Kev Sharp and take your dice because they failed you. Take them out and read them the warrant for execution, and then drop the hammer on them.
There you go.
The video that have you ever seen that video that Kev did?
No, but I remember seeing him light Twilight Struggle on fire. So.
Well, this one he took some dice that were rolling very poorly for him. And he did a video where he had them on the floor in a garage, I think, or something. And he read this like a writ of execution, and then bam, dropped the hammer on. It was greatness. I was like, how many times I wanted to do that? I think everybody loved it because everybody has had those dice that you just want to do that to.
The guys at Broken Token that make all of they make these laser cut balsa wood organizers for lots of other games. But they also make these laser cut dice towers that you can piece together. They've got these modular dice towers. So there's like 5 or 6 different things. So there's a Plinko one, and there's the stair steps and whatever else. And you could put these together. Like you could put a 2-story dice tower together if you really wanted to. One of the ones that they have for sale is the shame module, where it's this little cage that if your dice fail you can lock them in the cage, and they get to watch all of the other dice tumble past them while still being rolled.
I love that.
While they are removed from the game.
You have like a little penalty box for your dice. You're like, you're not doing your job. You're in the penalty
what
box.
It is. It's the penalty box for the dice. There's like flames coming up and everything, so it's like they're in purgatory. It's a blast. Jim Ozarski's the one that actually brought it to my attention at Origins a couple years ago. It was pretty hilarious, the dice tower. But yeah, I mean, you could put together 10 or 12 modules of this, and like if you've got a tall stairway in your house, you could just do this 2-story giant dice tower if you really wanted to. So
well, Stigler was making a comment here saying to John about the success for the CSW site, it'll be success only if it's easier to navigate than the original forums. Now, this is going to be John will be able to speak more to it, but it'll be a social site, and it's going to be a very, very, very familiar layout for people. So it's going to be very easy to navigate. And I think it's going to be great because we're going to be exposed to a lot of different content from a lot of different people and a lot of comments and things like that. So I think it's going to be fantastic. And, CSW has been around for so long and is such a huge, part of the war game community that it's great to see the evolution here going to this next social site. I look forward to it. I'm real excited about it.
Well, one of the things just for some expectation management for Stigler with regards to this new social site, this is not this isn't a Wikipedia, right? This is not a searchable archive of evergreen wargaming content. This is a social discussion site of what's happening now in the wargaming community. So while the navigation and the user interface on the original Consim World forums isn't the greatest, and I don't think anybody's really picking on John by pointing that out. John's well aware of some of those limitations. This new one is not intended to be a replacement for that, and it's not really trying to be a relaunch of that. This is a different site with a different intent. And so if you're looking for something that's easier to dig through archives, understand that this new site isn't intended to even create archives. I really don't think we're going overboard in admitting that. And I don't think John's really going to overly disagree with that characterization of it. I don't think that's what he's trying to do with it. It doesn't seem like it from the week or so that I've been poking around with it.
It's the next evolution of things, and it's a very organic evolution, and it's a welcome one. And I think it's going to be just great to have. And because, like I said, CSW is it's a cornerstone of wargaming. It really is, because that's where everybody goes for information. I'm not a big participant in forums. I'm just not, but I'm a lurker. I will go in there, I'll look up information, I'll see what questions have been asked. And usually the questions have been asked already once or twice. I don't need to add, a third or fourth or 25th time asking the same question. That's why there's a search function, and go in there and don't be that guy and ask the same question, for the millionth time. And I think it's going to be great, where people are going to be able to share a lot of information. You're going to be exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of new people, and you're going to get a lot of great information and great content. So I think it's fantastic. And Tom, you're a punk. Love you, Tom.
And Moe the peeping Tom there.
John is saying that, yes, it's very different, very Facebook-like, and that's what I was alluding to. I didn't want to say too much, but I was saying it's a very, very familiar interface and layout, and it looks very much like Facebook, minus all of the garbage that Facebook has.
Well, yeah, you don't have as many of the ass hats, right?
Yeah, well, not just that, but you don't have all the junk on the sides, all the ads and everything else. So
it's not 100% ass hat free, because like you and I are there, so that's
true. Have to have the resident ass hats,
but largely, So, in terms of, so this weekend we've got a whole lot of different kinds of gaming that we've got going online, including a couple of big Jim Ozarski events that are those, sort of trademark big multiplayer games that he's got going on. He's got a pair of them on Saturday, including a bulge game on Saturday evening. These kinds of events, though, are not something that are new to the Dragoons. This isn't something unusual for us. We've been doing a lot of these, like I said, going on, around 2 years now or so. Sure. I'm sure Tim will tell me when his first video went up from Saturday Night Fights. So folks that might be interested in these kinds of games, pop your head in the forums, over at the Dragoons, because we're organizing stuff all the damn time. We've got folks that are, we've got a handful of the dudes in Europe that are sort of self-organizing their own times to play, because gyms start too late in the evening for many of those guys to participate. We've still had dudes from Europe stay up and participate. We've had Giorgio hop in and play. We've had Andreas hop in and play. So we've had a handful of guys from Europe stay up till 3 a.m. to join us for Saturday Night Fights. Nice. It's kind of weird, actually. It's like, wait a minute, you're just staying up this late to play a game? All right, we love you. But the those Saturday Night Fights and Wednesday Night Warfare and whatever else, again, it's in the name, right? That's just Wednesday to us. This is a big deal for a lot of other folks, because it's a chance to do a bunch of games all at once. But if you enjoy the online gaming experience as a substitute for what you can't get face to face right now, we've got a lot of it happening. So check it out. It appears as though the news, running in the chat right now is, we need another breaking news alert here.
Yeah.
John's like, oh my God, we got a new platform coming for CSW. Like, I
there's the answer right there. Talk will be replatformed, but same discussion board concept.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So it's again, breaking news. So
this is why you got to be at these happy hours.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that just made it the happiest of hours for some people right there.
Hell yeah. No, that'll be great. And I was just poking my head into the Discord to see what was going on in there and see what was all going on, what everybody's talking about. And a lot of good chat going on in there and some games being played. People are talking about the happy hour and War Game Bootcamp guys going, and they've got their text channels going as well. And if you've not been to any of the War Game Bootcamp stuff, you guys really need to check that out. These guys do a fantastic job at live conventions, and they're doing it now in the virtual conventions. Brant had mentioned it earlier about how these guys are teaching how to use virtual tabletop stuff like Tabletop Simulator, Vassal, things like that, how to get into these digital games. But what their whole thing is, what they do is they literally, it's a boot camp. They teach you how to play different games. So,
and you're going to launch Vassal and Tabletop Simulator during the class to make sure you click around and do it right.
Yep.
So
it's definitely cool.
There are still seats available in tomorrow morning's session. It is 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's 10 a.m. East Coast time. So do the math for whatever your local time zone is. There is another one on Sunday morning. Now that's kind of too late for a lot of people to really jump in and play much since most of our events are happening on Saturday. But if you've got friends that, just sort of looking over your shoulder and, hey, how does all this work? You could try maybe plug them into the Sunday morning event. But it's 10 a.m. Eastern on both Saturday and Sunday. There's still seats available in there. Those guys can take up to 20. So there's plenty of seats available for folks to jump in there and go learn how to do this stuff. So
who threw you under the bus, Stigler? And H2 is saying it says 9 a.m. on the ACD page. Is that not updated?
Yeah, it's 10 a.m. There was a typo on the ACD page that I thought I had corrected it everywhere, but maybe not on that schedule sheet. It is 10 a.m. Part of it is the guys that run it are out on the west coast of the U.S., so they're already getting up at 7 a.m. to do 10 a.m. East Coast time.
I do like John's idea of that next time you guys need to take a shot every 10 minutes, and I normally would be all on board with something like that, and I would be drinking something instead. I'm just drinking iced tea tonight, but I went in for a nerve block this morning. So
I've been working on cider.
There you go. I went in for a nerve block this morning, another one. The funny thing about it is I got a nerve block the first day because it started on a Friday as well. For Harold's SD Hist. I got it in the morning, and then by that night I was like, okay, I'm good enough to sit in front of the computer for a couple hours, and we did the happy hour thing, and I was still feeling a little sluggish and stuff from the propofol in my system from earlier in the day, and I kind of was like that all day today, and I'm kind of still a little sluggish, so I don't think alcohol would be a good choice right now. But tomorrow I'll be good. So but tomorrow we've got DGS. We'll be talking DGS games. And that'll be interesting because, like you were talking before about Free Blades, a 32 millimeter fantasy skirmish with those awesome miniatures. So you can learn about that if you're interested in that. And then after that, I've got an interview with Bruce Maxwell for the upcoming game from Compass NATO, The Cold War Goes Hot, which I'm real excited about. And I think it's going to be a really fantastic interview because Bruce is a great guy. And I think everyone's going to be really interested and excited about the changes that are coming in the new NATO game.
Okay. And then on either side of those that you've got going on, we've also got Dan from No Enemies here. El Duce is interviewing Brian Train at, I believe it's 2:00 Eastern. And then at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, the last talk show tomorrow night, he's got Devin and Keith from Lock and Load. So they're going to be talking World at War and some other wargaming stuff. So Dan's got a couple of talk shows tomorrow also. So in addition to the seminar lineup we've got going on tomorrow, we've also got a couple of talk shows similar to this. And then on Sunday evening, the last event Sunday evening, we've got a happy hour that is me and Ardwolf. Since we had me and Moe to open things, we got me and Ardwolf closing things out. We've also got a breakfast session tomorrow morning, sort of a wake up with the coffee kind of thing that starts at 9 a.m. That one's just in the Discord. We're not going to broadcast or live stream that. We'll turn on the stream in the Discord chat. But that one's just tomorrow morning. We sort of stole Harold's coffee idea.
That's a great way to start it off because we need that social stuff. And one of the things that had thought about adding, we could still add it if there's interest. If anybody wants to add in the chat, if they like something like this, we had a bar area at the SD HistCon where we would just, in the Moe and Harold channel, we would do a Discord only video get together. And, you know, this is open to the world for everybody to see, to help drum up some interest and get more people into the convention. But then we'd also have one on Discord, which was just for the Discord people that were at the convention. It was kind of like an extra thing for people to do, to hang out and have a little social time, because we can't do that because we're not in person. So best way to do it is do that.
We'd have to play a little bit with the settings. One of the things that we did change this year with our settings, and that is different than what the San Diego guys did. The only folks that can stream either their cameras or their video in the Discord channels are the GMs. And that was to keep the rooms from getting choked with bandwidth issues with too many people turning on cameras or running a little too slow. So it's only the GMs that have the ability to stream any kind of video, whether it's cameras or streaming their games. So we could certainly open up a chat room like that. Again, we do have the pickup game area that could always be converted into that kind of chat if somebody wanted it. I'm happy to open a bar. If somebody wants just an open chat bar area, I'm totally fine opening up something like that. But it's going to be audio only unless there's GMs in there that can turn on their cameras. So,
and Tom wants me to talk like Howard Cosell. Are we going to talk about meatball sandwiches or not? He'll get the meatball reference. But yeah, that was some good times. But yeah, it's always a lot of fun doing this, and I really have enjoyed these virtual conventions, and I look forward to continuing this over the coming year. And Stigler's going, nice impression. Yeah, Howard Cosell's a tough one. Not too tough, but I like doing voices sometimes. But yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of improvements over time with these conventions. We've already seen them, and maybe
we hope.
Maybe we'll see some tournaments added in as well. And one thing I want to do is I want to mention here, because I've talked about it before. With these conventions, one of the things that we're missing is the hall where you can go and you can buy stuff from vendors, the vendor hall, where you can go in there, see their stuff, talk to them, and pick up some games. Well, even though we don't have that right now, bear in mind that you're getting designers from these different publishers that are coming in on their own time and teaching us games, you know, their games that they have. So be mindful of that and supportive of that by going and picking up a game from the publisher directly, if possible, to help support that designer and the publisher as well, because it's tough on everybody right now. Everyone, you know, it's tough financially for a lot of people out of jobs and things like that. And if you are working, we're fortunate. Remember, the publishers are in the same boat. The designers are in the same boat as well. So try to help each other out and make sure that you support the publishers and the designers that are here for these events by going and picking up a copy of their game from the publisher directly.
And one of the other things, you know, Mo, you mentioned we don't have a true vendor hall where you can walk around and necessarily like talk to the publishers and look at all the stuff they've got. But the different vendor sponsors do have a variety of discounts that they're going to be offering. And like one of the things that I was running out of time to do, this goes back to, you know, could use a hand. One of the Dragoons was working on some stuff. And so I've got to go finish fleshing out the info that he had started piecing together. We do have a bit of a virtual vendor hall this time around where folks like Lock and Load and the Wargaming Company and that they're offering discounts for folks to be able to buy from the publishers. And this is something that we wanted to do different than what we did back in the summer. If you remember back in the summer when we did the Welcome Talk Show with Mo, we gave away like 4 games and a t-shirt or something like that.
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff that we gave away.
Yeah, we had a bunch of stuff we gave away, and we're not really focusing on any kind of giveaway stuff this time around because we didn't want to go back to the publishers and ask about any kind of freebie anything. What we've done instead is we talked to the publishers about, hey, do you mind offering some sort of convention discount? Because what we felt was much more important, and this is a conversation Mo and I kind of had, that we felt was much more important was to be able to support the vendors with some sales, because they got hosed this summer with the loss of all those convention sales.
Absolutely.
They got completely murdered. and to be able to put a couple of bucks in a vendor's pocket in any way we can is going to make a huge difference to the long-term health of the hobby by making sure these guys survive and are sticking around and here for the long haul. And so rather than trying to bug them for some freebies or giveaway stuff, you know, if you play one of the games and you go, man, that's pretty awesome, I want to go get a copy of it, odds are pretty good we've got some sort of discount from those different companies. We've also Enterprise Games, who is just the vendor. They're the great warehouse out of Indiana. Don is frequently a partner of ours at Origins. He's usually the one sponsoring the GMT events that we have at Origins. Yeah. But Don has a discount also that he's offering for Enterprise. So all those things are going to be posted in the Discord a little later tonight, and they're good generally through the weekend that you can go save a couple of bucks by ordering stuff from these guys. So you know, take advantage of that and support those publishers.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, you know, we all have the option of buying through Amazon or buying through, you know, your favorite online game store. Just like people say to go to your local game store and support them, and definitely do that. But also remember when you're getting these games, try to buy directly from the publisher. I know I do that because you're getting the publisher the money. You're not getting it to you're not going to a vendor that's selling it and they're not getting the same amount of money. So you want to get every extra dollar you can into the publisher's pockets, especially the ones who get a presence here at these conventions and have designers showing up and showing games. I think it's real important, as you said, Brant, to help support them as best we can, especially in this time right now. It's really tough for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to get John Longshore here into the Discord.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's something that's paid. You know, there's paid access to that Discord, so we're not just going to broadcast it over YouTube like this. So for folks that have bought the ticket, the news updates that are on the convention site where you bought your ticket are the same news updates that got emailed to the attendees, and that includes the link to the Discord that you can get into from there.
Yeah.
So that's where you need to go to find those things. It is not the same Discord server that exists for the Armchair Dragoons, just as you know, part of our Dragoons site. This is a special, different, dedicated one just for this weekend event. And like we did last summer, we're going to leave this one up for a couple of months. So if folks are still matchmaking with some games or want to use one of the rooms to play in, that's great. And as we get closer to our next convention, we'll shut this one down to stand up the next one. And we do that mainly because reconfiguring this one would be kind of a pain in the butt, but also because we don't want to just kick everybody out. We'd rather just shut it down and start fresh and let folks sign into a new one.
And like you said, it's a specific URL, that specific Discord for that convention.
Correct.
And otherwise, people who didn't register would still be on that, you know, thing, and it's not worth doing that. So
yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to honor the folks that supported us with, you know, paying that registration fee, and we don't want it just out there into the open. So you know, again, John Longshore, sorry that this might be an extra hoop or two to jump through, but without that, it's just la-di-da-di, everybody gets in, and we'd rather control access to this to honor the folks that were actually paying for it or volunteering their time to help support it.
And it's a big whopping $3. So
yeah. I don't think it's the $3 necessarily that bothers folks, you know, but fair's fair. Right. The folks that paid for access should be the only ones that have access.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. So this is the absolute last call. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, ideas, anything like that, we need to get them in here because we're going to wrap this up. We've gone a little over our allotted time. We're at 2 hours and 9 minutes. So that's fine. You know, we'll keep going. We got 20 people while they're in here still hanging out. And it's a happy hour. It's not like it's any structured thing. We're just
a happy 2 hours and change.
Yeah. And then, John says, my 8-year-old assistant had to go home. So
depending on where you are, it's past your 8-year-old assistant's bedtime.
Exactly. So the good thing is the 8-year-old will be up early. So they can get help early in the morning if they can't get it squared away tonight.
What is kind of funny is folks that have never had an 8-year-old are always like, yeah, but there's no school tomorrow. They can stay up. Look, man, once 8-year-olds get past about 9:30 at night, they just turn into jerks. Like, you just don't want to deal with them at that point because they're unpleasant to be around. It's like, put the kid to bed because he's tired and he's cranky. He's a pain in the ass.
So, well, apparently John is also tired, cranky, and a pain in the ass because it's past his bedtime. But Okay, so I don't see any last questions here. So we'll just wrap it up here now. Brant, any last comments from you?
I hope everybody has a good time. And if you run into an issue, if you run into a problem, send up a flare in the Discord. There's information in there about how to get some help. We'll try and cover it as best we can. Tomorrow morning, I'm fairly busy kind of emceeing a whole bunch of the seminar talks that we've got on Zoom. But we've got a bunch of different great volunteers and techies that'll be able to jump in and answer some questions for you here and there. One of the great things about the wargaming community is that they're always happy to help out fellow wargamers. Yeah. And so, if somebody can answer something for you, they will. If you get a chance to pop into any of the seminars tomorrow, we've got some pretty cool talks. David and Stennis from the Wargaming Company is going to be talking about sort of the design perspectives behind his Napoleonic minis game design. That's a sans resultat. And so after you hear him talk about it some, there's a couple of chances to play in ESR games. We've got the guys from Georgetown are back. Some of the wargame design students are going to be presenting their game about Russian operations in the Ukraine, which is kind of neat. I was fortunate in that I got invited to sit in on an early pitch meeting for some of those games. It was me and Volko, so we had the brains and the looks. Sitting there talking about.
Volko's a good-looking guy.
Yeah, I think Volko runs laps around you and me combined on the intellectual side of things. But we had a chance to sit down in see some of the early prototypes from the students, which was really kind of neat. And so one of those finished versions is going to be discussed tomorrow with the Georgetown guys. Chris Weave is back to talk about space combat. You want to talk about somebody who's put a lot of really good thought into space navies and space combat. Chris does a great job of that. He's back tomorrow afternoon. Jim Werbineth's talking about operations in the Philippines in World War II. I'm mulling over in my head trying to remember everything that we've got coming up tomorrow for seminar talks.
Seminars? Let's see here.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different stuff. I'm doing one on why you really don't want realistic logistics in war games.
Yeah.
And this is coming from the experience of a dude who's been a loggy. So
the thing that gets me about logistics and war games, some people love it. They love the whole OCS thing. It's like, really? I want to shoot the bullets, not count them. And transport
logistics as OCS defines it ain't even close.
No, but it's trying to add that as a portion of the operational.
It does want to make it a legitimate criteria you do have to address, but not to the. And this is why I said why you don't want realistic logistics in the war games. That's part of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And then let's see, let me pull that list back up. We've got your talk, 3 armies, troop quality and defense of the Philippines, Brian Train interview with no enemies here, naval metaphors and science fiction, DGS games interview. DGS games interview, Bruce Maxwell interview, and then the lock and load interview with no enemies here. So there's quite a bit of seminars to do tomorrow. So even if you're not going to play anything, definitely jump in and, for at least a little bit of these talks, and you may find yourself really surprised. Like, I'm just going to hang out for 5 minutes. Oh, wow. Next thing you know is an hour later. I'm just having a great time.
And then Sunday morning, we got Dana Lombardi too. So
yes. Yeah.
So that'll be cool. So there'll be all kinds of different stuff to look into. I will say, Stigler, I saw your comment about CNA. The kinds of logistics stuff I'm talking about, CNA gets very granular in terms of what they track, but they don't get very granular in terms of what they make you execute. And that's part of what I'll be talking about tomorrow.
Yeah, it kind of almost is like Command Modern Naval or Command, whatever it's called now. CMO.
Well, the new one is Command Modern Operations.
Modern Operations, CMO. So you can go like CMO, Harpoon, the whole thing. They're all the same, as far as what you're going to be doing. You're diving into really granular stuff, and some people really enjoy that, and it is great, but it also can become tiring, and that ties into what you're talking about with real logistics. It would become really tiring, and you're not even getting to see things blow up. At least with CMO, you're getting into the granularity, but you're seeing stuff blow up, so you're getting a payoff.
There's a reason that maneuver battalions out there actually have 2 command posts on the battlefield, one for operations and one for logistics.
Yeah, exactly.
there's a reason you need a separate command post just for the logistics. And that's part of what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. And
cool.
We're already dragging tonight out a little too much. I don't want to give away too much of tomorrow's talk. So,
well, there you go. So tomorrow, check that one out. And like I said, there's a bunch of different seminars tomorrow and a bunch of different events. So go to the site, go to the page, and you can separate all the events out by type. Look through them, and if you don't already have a ticket for them, go ahead and get one, and jump into whatever you are interested in. And like I said, we've got plenty of seminars to enjoy and plenty of live events and pickup games. If you guys want to meet up with somebody in the Discord and pick up a game, go for it. You're going to be doing the same thing there as the demo people are going to be. Just get together, play a game on Vassal or Tabletop Simulator or whatever, and enjoy yourself. And make some new friends, and make sure that when you meet people in Discord, add them as a friend so that way you have them in your friends list for future reference.
Yep, absolutely.
So we're gonna tie it up here. Do you have something last thing there, Brant?
Just thanks for hosting tonight. It's great having you back involved again with the talk show, and the talk's coming tomorrow, but especially the big welcome happy hour for everybody tonight. It's great, and really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
No, definitely having a great time, and gonna look forward to a really great time the entire weekend, and hopefully get some sessions in tomorrow, and see what I can get in on Sunday as well. But thanks everybody for tuning in tonight and for joining us. We have still about 19 people in the chat, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, we said good night, and it went up from 17 to 19.
Exactly. So now it's up to 20 now. No, it's at 19. But so we'll just wrap it up here. And like I said, really appreciate it. And if you are not already signed up for the con, go sign up for it. There's plenty of events tomorrow and Sunday to enjoy. So go check it out. It's only going to cost you $3. So definitely worth the time. But once again, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again for more interviews tomorrow and more events all weekend long. Have a great night, everybody.